Chapter 680. A group of people came out of the portal. Among them were people Lei Xingfeng was familiar with. He didn't expect Master Qing Yin and Hai Yuanlang to come together. There was also someone unexpected. It was Master Dima, a mid-level monarch king, a true expert of the Mingzhe Alliance. And with one look, he knew that the leader of this group was Master Dima. Qing Mu went up and said respectfully, "Master Dima." Dima smiled, "Brother Qing Mu." Then he saw Lei Xingfeng and smiled. "Little guy, why are you here?" Lei Xingfeng went up and said, "Greetings, Master Dima." I'm in the disciplinary camp." Dima said, "Why are you in the disciplinary camp?" Lei Xingfeng said, "I was implicated and was sent to the disciplinary camp. It's been more than a year." Dima's face darkened. "Qing Yin, why didn't you tell me?" Qing Yin smiled bitterly. "I couldn't find you last time. You were sent to the ruins as soon as you came back. I didn't have time to look for you. If it wasn't for this mission, I wouldn't be able to see you." Dima said, "Who did this?" With his experience, of course he knew that there was a problem. Punishing a restriction master without a sound, there must be someone behind it. Qing Yin said, "We'll talk about it when we have time." Dima said, "All right, little guy, follow me." Lei Xingfeng agreed. Feng Heng and a Yin who were at the side were dumbfounded. Looking at his clothes, they could tell that Dima was an elder a level higher than Qing Mu. Xi and Feng actually knew such a high-level person. The two of them were secretly happy. Whether or not there was a high-level person was completely different. Having a backer was much better than fighting alone. Everyone came to Qing Mu's place. Dima sat down and said, Feng, tell me, why were you sent to the disciplinary camp?" Xi and Feng sighed. "It's like this, it's by Xia. He wanted me to set up a restriction, and the reward was to mine ores. And it's a ring crystal mine, but I didn't expect that I would end up in the disciplinary camp." Dima said, "Huh? Is it about the Tai family?" Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "Uncle Tai must have reported it. Actually, I don't know anything." Dima said, "So that's how it is. But such a small matter shouldn't be serious enough to send you to the disciplinary camp, right?" Lei Xingfeng said, "It should be Sir Terry's decision." Dima said, "The Tai clan is going overboard. All right, I will settle this matter." Qing Mu said, "Lord Dima, Feng has performed a meritorious service this time. He directly broke through 2 layers of restrictions. Because of this, he can receive a pardon." Dima was stunned. "So powerful? Very well. I'll make the decision on this matter." Qing Yin said, "Out of the attacks from several directions, only your side succeeded in breaking the restriction. I was curious at first, but I didn't expect it to be a Feng who did it." "Haha, a Feng. The restriction here made several restriction grandmasters and restriction grandmasters helpless." Lei Xingfeng said, "The first layer was fine. The main problem is the second layer. It's a large-scale compound restriction made up of 4 different restrictions. It's really hard to break. I was lucky." Qing Yin said, "It's not that lucky. There was one direction where almost everyone was killed or injured, but they still couldn't break the first layer. It was the headquarters who sent people to break the first layer. The second layer couldn't be broken at all. We were going to invite a restriction grandmaster, but we didn't expect you to break it here. That's why we came here." Dima said, "This matter was well done. Feng's ability is very good. Qing Yin, although his level isn't as good as yours, it's close." Qing Yin said, "To be able to break a compound formation like this, he's indeed at the grandmaster level. However, this isn't something I can test. We'll need a restriction grandmaster." Dima said, "I'll take care of this." Lei Xingfeng hurriedly thanked him. "Thank you, Lord Dima." Dima waved his hand. "I owe you a favor. No need to thank me. There were more than 1,000 people in this group. The weakest of them was at the initial level Dao Lord level. There were quite a few middle-level Dao Lord Patriarchs, and there were even a few peak-level Dao Lord Patriarchs. Aside from Qing Yin, who was a restriction grandmaster, there was also a group of high-level restriction masters and a few restriction grandmasters." Hai Yuanlang said in a low voice, "We went to find Lord Dima, but he just came back recently. We didn't have a chance to tell him about you. We didn't expect to run into you here." Lei Xingfeng nodded. He also said in a low voice, "It's fine. Even if no one came to save me, I'd be able to leave the disciplinary camp soon. Hai Yuanlang smiled. I know you're strong. Hee, let me tell you something. Lei Xingfeng asked, what is it? Hai Yuanlang said, last time Uncle Tai reported it. In the end, the Bright Lake Alliance sent people to excavate the Ring crystal mine. Guess what happened? Lei Xingfeng's heart skipped a beat. However, he still acted as if nothing had happened. He said, what happened? Hai Yuanlang said, the underground Ring crystal mine has long been excavated. Most importantly, the Tai clan has been occupying the mine for an entire month. Now the Tai clan is also losing money. It said that Uncle Tai was beaten half to death and is being punished by the clan. Lei Xingfeng found it funny. Of course, he knew what was going on. The underground Ring crystal mine was excavated by the secret sect. With the poverty of the secret sect, it was basically impossible for a group of starving people to leave anything behind. Hai Yuanlang continued, for Uncle Tai, the entire Tai clan has offended a lot of people. Now they're having a hard time. Although Uncle Tai is fine, he's still being locked up by the clan. It's said that he'll be locked up for a few years. If he doesn't advance, he'll be locked up for a period of time. Lei Xingfeng didn't sympathize with this guy. He said, serve him right. Hai Yuanlang said, the Tai clan has offended too many people. A few powerful people in their clan have lost their temper. Although the Tai clan won this time and beat the Bai clan into a sorry state, they've also offended a few other clans, including the AI clan, Bath clan, Ma clan, and a few others. Originally, this kind of private excavation would be fine if no one exposed it. But once it was exposed, it would implicate other clans who dare to do it. The number of people they've offended is huge. Lei Xingfeng said, to vent their anger, they don't care about the consequences. He knew that this kind of large-scale alliance was like a country in his previous life. There were a lot of unspoken rules. Once broken, it would cause a lot of turmoil. Of course, he didn't have any thoughts about it. But now he was just a little unlucky. Qing Mu said, a Feng, you should participate in this operation as well. Lei Xingfeng agreed. He knew that Qing Mu was giving him some benefits. He would also get a share of the things found in the ruins. He wouldn't be like the other members of the discipline camp, who were throwing their lives away without any benefits. Qing Yin smiled and said, a Feng has to come. He's already broken 2 seals. There will be more seals inside. With a Feng, it'll be much easier to deal with them. Dima said, yes, I hope we're the first batch to enter. Qing Mu smiled and said, that's good. But even if we're not the first batch, we'll still get something. The second seal has been broken, and we can already touch some of the buildings in the ruins. But they're under my control, so no one is going in yet. We're just waiting for Sir to come. Lei Xingfeng realized that Qing Mu didn't dare to explore the ruins alone. He needed a higher-level elder from the headquarters to search for the items in the ruins. Dima said, this time, I'll bring a small number of people to explore the ruins first. Yes, Brother Qing Mu, the 3 of us will go in first. He thought for a while and said, a Feng will go with us. Lei Xingfeng was overjoyed. He said, yes, yes. Hai Yuanlang said enviously, a Feng, you're so lucky. This time, even he didn't have a chance to go in first. Everyone knew that those who went in first would get the biggest harvest. Those who went in last would only be left with some leftovers. Qing Mu said, when are we going in? Does Sir Dima need a rest? Dima smiled and said, I don't need a rest. I'm not tired. Let's go now. Qing Mu and Qing Yin stood up. The others listened to them and didn't have the right to go with them. Dima was very famous in the Ming-Zhe Alliance. If he didn't get Lei Xingfeng's 10,000 years spiritual liquid, he wouldn't be so polite to Lei Xingfeng. Lei Xingfeng hurriedly stood up, and the 4 of them walked out together. There was a large group of people standing outside the door. When they saw Dima, they all bowed to him. Dima said, wait here. We'll go to the ruins first. Remember, don't run around. No one is allowed to go to the ruins for the time being. Everyone agreed. Qing Mu said, Feng Heng, Diyin, you 2 are in charge. Let the people in the camp move and arrange a place for us to stay. Feng Heng and Diyin answered and immediately went back to build a new wooden house. After all, they were the previous people in charge. Dima said, Let's go. We'll go take a look at the ruins. The four of them walked. Not long after they left the camp, Ching Mu said, "This is the original first layer of restriction." Dima nodded and said, "This layer of restriction was broken by a phone." A phone? Do you think there's a big difference between the restriction here and the one you're in contact with now? Lei Xingfeng said, "The difference isn't big. It's slightly more powerful. There are some places that are more special." Qin Yin said, "Is there such a situation?" He said a few special restriction terms. The main meaning was if there were some special restriction phenomena. Lei Xingfeng thought for a while and couldn't help but be surprised. "Sir Qin Yin, there really is such a situation, especially on the second layer of compound restriction. This situation is especially prominent." Qin Yan's face was full of smiles. He said, "Elder Da, this should be the ruin you're looking for." Dima immediately became excited. He said, "Are you sure?" Qin Yin said, "I'm not 100% sure, but the possibility is very high." Chapter 681. Dima laughed. "You and a Feng are my lucky stars." Lei Xingfeng laughed. "I'm not a lucky star." Dima said domineeringly, "If I say you are, then you are. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have any hope of advancing. Now I know why I left the Mingzhe Alliance for so long. It's to gather materials for advancement. I'm still lacking a little, but there's hope. If this ruin is what I think it is, I might be able to get one or two of the things I need." At Dima's level, it was very difficult to advance. It was the same in the Mingzhe Alliance. Every material they needed was a treasure of heaven and earth. Every item required a lot of time and effort to gather. Therefore, the higher the level, the more difficult it was to advance. It was common for a monarch-level expert to not be able to advance in a few hundred years. Qing Mu was surprised. What? Master Dima is advancing? He knew that Dima was a middle-class monarch. Once he advanced, he would become a high-class monarch. In the Mingzhe Alliance, he would be considered one of the best of the best. Once he reached the monarch rank, each advancement would no longer be difficult. Dima chuckled. His complacency was evident in his words. Qing Mu was disappointed, but he quickly cupped his hands and said, "Congratulations, Master Dima." Dima said, "I'm just lucky. We should be at the second layer of seals, right?" Lei Xingfeng was secretly relieved. He was afraid that if he continued talking, he would have to talk about the 10,000-year spirit liquid. He had a lot of it, but he didn't want to take it out unless he had no other choice. It would attract too much attention. Qing Yin asked again, "A Feng, is this where the second layer of seals is?" Lei Xingfeng said, "That's right. This seal occupies a large area. After it was broken, many battle puppets came out. They were very fierce." Qing Mu said, "If it wasn't for a Feng's thunder killing formation, the people in the discipline camp would probably be dead. With a Feng's thunder killing formation, we were able to completely eliminate the puppets." Dima asked, "Are the puppets here that powerful?" Lei Xingfeng said, "The last wave of humanoid puppets is about as strong as a Dao Lord Patriarch. Even if they are weak, they can't be that weak. Their defenses are especially strong." Aoki admitted, "Their defense is indeed strong. I can't destroy them in one strike. I have to attack them twice in order to destroy them." Dima said, "These puppets are much stronger than our Mingzhe Alliance's Ming Wuhal's puppets. They should have gained something this time." Qin Yin smiled and said, "This time, the people from the puppet hall were jumping up and down wanting to go. I don't think they were approved." Dima said, "After we finish searching the ruins, their application will probably be approved. Haha." Lei Xingfeng immediately knew that the puppet hall wouldn't have a high status in the Mingzhe Alliance. Compared to the restriction main hall, it was far inferior. Dima said with emotion, "The puppet hall is completely useless. I remember when I first entered the Mingzhe Alliance, the puppet hall, the alchemy hall, and the restriction hall were called the three great halls of the Mingzhe Alliance. Now, not to mention the restriction hall, their status is far inferior to the alchemy hall. They lack successors." Soon, they arrived at the bottom of the second layer of restriction. There were huge pits in the snow. It was especially obvious in the dazzling snow. Lei Xingfeng immediately understood that these pits used to hide countless puppets. Now they were all empty. Dima also saw it. He said, "This is where the puppets are hiding. Let's go down and take a look." Lei Xingfeng was the youngest, so he said, "I'll go down and take a look." As he spoke, he jumped into the pit. The bottom was still covered in snow. When he stepped on it, crunching sounds could be heard. There was a hole that wasn't too deep. He could see the shape of the puppets. This hole was where the 3 puppets were hiding. Dima and the other 2 also jumped down. Qing Mu smiled and said, "This is the base, right?" Lei Xingfeng saw a strange card. He gestured and saw what it was. It looked like a charger socket. This thing was used to charge the puppets. There were energy crystals at the bottom. Dima smiled and said, "Only the puppet hall would be interested in this thing." He turned and left. Lei Xingfeng asked, "Can I take some bases?" He was interested in the charging car of the puppets. Dima said, "It doesn't matter. You can take them." Lei Xingfeng was overjoyed. He immediately started to take them. However, before he could take a few, Dima and the others continued to walk forward. Lei Xingfeng had to follow. The terrain began to rise. It was a snow slope. Lei Xingfeng and the others slowly walked up. Soon, they reached the top. Because of the snow, even if one had good eyesight and flew high, they couldn't see the inside of the ruins clearly. This was the area where they couldn't see clearly. Snow piles protruded from the ground like small hills. However, Lei Xingfeng knew that they were definitely not small hills. There was some kind of building that was buried in snow. Dima said, "This place is considered the outer building of the ruins. Whether we can find something good or not is hard to say. It depends on our luck. Let's each pick one and see who has better luck." Each of them picked a small hill. Lei Xingfeng picked a higher one. He said, "I'll take this." Dima said, "If you find something you like, take it. If it's not useful, leave it where it is." Whether it was Qing Mu, Qing Yin, or Lei Xingfeng, they were all very curious about the building under the snow. They didn't know what treasure was buried under it. Lei Xingfeng used his illusory hand to lift the snow pile, revealing the building underneath. A stone building. Lei Xingfeng was slightly happy. If it was made of wood, although it wouldn't rot easily in this world of ice and snow, it wouldn't be easy to preserve after such a long time. If it was made of stone, it wouldn't be a problem. Coupled with the cold weather, if there was any treasure, it would definitely be preserved. After carefully clearing away the accumulated snow, Exine Feng found the door to enter and exit. It was a 2-story building. Lei Xingfeng checked it and found that there was a layer of restriction around the building. This restriction wasn't used to kill people, but to protect the building. No matter how much snow there was, it couldn't erode the building. It was just that after a long time, no one came to clear it, so the snow and ice accumulated. This restriction was very easy to break. For Lei Xingfeng, as long as he broke a node, the entire restriction would collapse. He casually released a bolt of lightning and instantly broke a node. Then, he saw the entire restriction collapse. Lei Xingfeng saw a window. Just as he was about to enter, his heart suddenly moved. He didn't enter, but instead retreated. He stood outside and stared at the small building. He suddenly remembered the overwhelming number of puppets when he broke the second restriction. He thought that if this was an important residence, and there were a few human-shaped puppets hidden inside, with his current strength, he probably wouldn't be able to handle it. Without hesitation, Lei Xingfeng released a group of humanoid beasts and set up a thunder-killing array. Since he thought that there might be a trap here, with his degree of cautiousness, he naturally wouldn't foolishly enter the room by himself. He summoned Jingzia and brought a few silver-grade humanoid beasts. Jingzia came out and asked, "What's wrong?" Lei Xingfeng pointed at the small building and said, "I suspect that there's a trap inside. Command the humanoid beasts to go in and take a look. Don't go in, just command them." Lei Xingfeng would be a little distressed if the humanoid beasts were lost, but if Jingzia was lost, he would be more than distressed. This was a very rare, intelligent humanoid beast, one of the most valuable gains he had obtained in the Forbidden Area. No matter what, he couldn't let any harm come to her. Jingzia agreed. She commanded a silver-grade humanoid beast to break open the window and jump in. Lei Xingfeng stood outside and waited. After a while, Jingzia said, There's nothing up there. Shall I ask him to go down? Lei Xingfeng said, I'll go in and take a look. Jing Zia said, Okay, I'll go in too. She jumped in the window first, followed by Lei Xingfeng. This was a very elegant room. There wasn't much dust in it. The floor was covered with a thick carpet. When one stepped on it, a light cloud of dust rose up. There were a few strange-shaped bottles in the corner, which looked like skewers of candied haws. There was a soft couch and a low table. On the table was a page of the Star Python record. Lei Xingfeng hurried forward and picked it up. He didn't care about other things, but the Star Python record was definitely something good. Lei Xingfeng didn't have time to check it. He put the Star Python record into his hidden lens space. There were 2 flat boxes in the corner, side by side. Lei Xingfeng reached out and put them away. Now is not the time to check it. He would slowly look at it when he had time. Lei Xingfeng stood in the room and looked around again. He also put away the bottles. Although he didn't know what they were, he didn't want to let anything go. Of course, he didn't want to let go of the table and the soft couch. The silver-grayed humanoid beast opened the door. There were 3 rooms on the second floor. Lei Xingfeng waited for the humanoid beast to enter another room. After it said that it was safe, he took Jing Zia in. He found it funny. Maybe he was too careful. There were many boxes in this room, but Lei Xingfeng didn't have time to check them. He didn't care whether they were filled with things or not. They were all thrown into his hidden lens space. There were 3 rooms, but there was nothing special. Jing Zia commanded the silver-grayed humanoid beast to go down the stairs. Boom! Just as the humanoid beast went down to the first floor, it was instantly destroyed. Lei Xingfeng heard the loud noise. He didn't hesitate to grab Jing Zia and put her into his hidden lens space. He then smashed a window and jumped out. His weakness was in the middle of the thunder-killing array. He then saw the door downstairs of the small building being smashed by a huge force. 2 humanoid figures rushed out of the small building. These 2 humanoid figures were different from the ones he saw before. They were relatively skinny, only about 1.8 meters tall. They wore light, golden armor and roared as they rushed out of the broken door. They were holding sword-like weapons in their hands. Chapter 682. As soon as the 2 humanoid puppets appeared, they charged towards Lei Xingfeng. Lei Xingfeng landed on the ground and activated the thunder-killing array without hesitation. At the same time, the 2 humanoid puppets charged into the killing array. Thunder and lightning immediately roared as the entire thunder-killing array spun rapidly. Bolts of lightning struck the 2 humanoid beasts. Lei Xingfeng was still rejoicing that he had been careful. What a joke. These 2 humanoid puppets were obviously of a higher level than the ones he had seen last time. Moreover, their strength seemed to be comparable to that of a mid-level Dao Lord Patriarch. If he had gone down just now, his body would have probably been smashed into pieces. Soon, Lei Xingfeng discovered that the thunder-killing array could not kill the 2 humanoid puppets. When the lightning struck them, it could only slow them down. It could not completely stop the humanoid beast from attacking him. Lei Xingfeng increased the power of the thunder-killing array and quickly retreated from it. He threw out another thunder-killing array, which was a mobile one. He ran in the direction where Lord Dima had gone with the mobile thunder-killing array. In just a short while, the 2 humanoid puppets quickly broke through the thunder-killing array and swept away all the humanoid beasts in the array. They were all smashed into pieces. Only then did they chase after Lei Xingfeng. The difference was too great. Even the thunder-killing array could not stop them. The 2 humanoid puppets were extremely fast. Lei Xingfeng had no choice but to activate the mobile thunder-killing array again. The 2 humanoid puppets did not care at all and directly crashed into the array. The mobile thunder-killing array was actually weaker than the previous one. However, because it could be moved, the 2 humanoid puppets were more difficult to deal with. Lei Xingfeng focused his attacks on delaying the puppets while moving towards Lord Dima's location. At that moment, humanoid puppets charged out of the 4 buildings that the 4 of them had chosen. Bluestone fled in a sorry state. He was only a Dao Lord Patriarch, so there was no way he could block the attacks of the 2 humanoid dolls. He cried out for help. One had to know that he didn't have Lei Xingfeng's ability to quickly set up formations. The combat power of a restriction grandmaster was nothing more than a joke. They weren't good at fighting to begin with. Fortunately, Greenwood was in the next room. He had only just destroyed one puppet when he heard Qin Yan's cry for help. He immediately gave up on destroying the other puppet and rushed towards Qin Yan. The two humanoid dolls that Dima encountered were shattered by him in one strike. One had to know that his strength was extremely strong. These humanoid dolls were no threat to him at all. Immediately after, Dima saw a moving restriction. The lightning and thunder shocked him, but he quickly reacted. This was Lei Xingfeng. He should have been attacked by the humanoid puppet. Thinking about Lei Xingfeng's cultivation, Dima was shocked. This child actually had a method to resist. Dima rushed over. When Lei Xingfeng saw Dima rushing over, he immediately felt much better. With Dima around, these humanoid dolls weren't a threat at all. Dima directly rushed into the thunder-killing array and braved the lightning strikes. Lei Xingfeng was shocked to discover that Dima didn't care about the lightning strikes at all. He was even more relaxed than Lei Xingfeng. He quickly moved through the thunder-killing array and rushed to the side of the humanoid dolls in a few breaths of time. He shouted, "Stop the restriction!" Lei Xingfeng immediately retreated with the humanoid dolls and stopped the restriction. Dima only lightly slapped twice, and the two humanoid dolls were shattered into pieces. He didn't have time to say anything and rushed towards Qin Yan. Lei Xingfeng followed closely behind. When Dima and Lei Xingfeng arrived, Qin Mu had already killed the humanoid dolls. He was supporting Qin Yan and saying something. Qin Yan was slightly injured. Fortunately, it wasn't too serious. Qin Mu had come back in time. Qin Yan rarely fought with others, and his battle experience was relatively weak. After being attacked by two humanoid dolls, if Qin Mu hadn't come to his rescue in time, he would have been seriously injured. If he was unlucky, it wouldn't be strange if he was killed by the humanoid dolls. After drinking the healing medicine, Qin Yan was still in shock. He said, "I didn't expect there to be such a thing in the room. I was almost killed." Dima glanced at Lei Xingfeng and couldn't help but sigh. From this point of view, Lei Xingfeng wasn't just a little stronger than Qin Yan. His cultivation was the lowest, but his reaction was the fastest. Furthermore, his thoughts were meticulous and he was prepared early on. When he fought, he didn't panic. Just this point alone showed that he was much stronger than Qin Yan. He said, "Fortunately, Brother Qin Mu is here. It's okay. We were careless." Qin Yan's face was pale. In fact, he had experienced many battles. However, he was always surrounded by many experts at any time. He never had to fight personally. This time, he was forced to admit that he was really bad at fighting. However, the opportunity to explore seals was very rare. If he hadn't followed Master Dima this time, even if he was a seal grandmaster, he wouldn't have been able to enter the front line without help. Dima said, "Qin Yan, can you continue? If you can't, go back first." Qin Yan's pale face suddenly turned red. He said, "I'll go with Big Brother." Dima nodded. "Good. A phone will follow me." Lei Xingfeng agreed happily. With Master Dima as his bodyguard, he didn't have to be afraid of anything. Moreover, Master Dima wouldn't rob him of anything. Of course, if Master Dima needed something, Lei Xingfeng couldn't snatch it from him. To be able to take advantage of a great expert, Xi and Feng couldn't wait to have more of such a good thing. Lei Xingfeng said with a smile, "Master Dima, can you catch these puppets the next time you see them?" His eyes were very sharp. He could tell at a glance that the humanoid puppet guarding the house was definitely something good. However, with his strength and the restriction array, it was very difficult for him to capture a humanoid puppet. Dima said, "It's not hard to catch them. However, it's very difficult to control them. What do you want them for?" Lei Xingfeng said, "I have a way to control them." Dima was surprised again. He said, "Don't be ridiculous. Even if the puppet hall came, they wouldn't be able to control these high-level puppets. They've tried many times and injured many people. However, none of them succeeded." Lei Xingfeng said, "Let's try first. It's not a big deal if we don't succeed." Dima thought about it and agreed. Since he didn't lose anything, why not do it? He nodded and said, "Okay, I'll try." Lei Xingfeng was overjoyed. With the help of a super expert like Dima, he believed that it wouldn't be a problem to get a few puppets. The puppets he got last time were different from the ones here. If he could get them, he would be able to create mobile killing formations in the future. Even if he didn't create mobile killing formations, with these puppets that were comparable to Dao Lord Old Ancestors, it would be very good even if they were placed in the secret door as guards for others. Dima came to a snow hill and said, "Open it." Lei Xingfeng immediately went up and removed the snow on the building. Soon, the building was exposed. Qing Mu and Qing Yin ran to another snow hill and started working together. Since there were puppets guarding the building, they had to work together. Lei Xingfeng couldn't do it alone, so he had to work with Dima. If he could get more puppets, Lei Xingfeng felt that this trip was worth it. Dima patted the door lightly, and it shattered into pieces. Then, he walked into the room, with Lei Xingfeng following closely behind. A black shadow pounced on them. Dima's illusory hand squeezed and grabbed the puppet. The puppet started to struggle violently. Lei Xingfeng immediately jumped out. Based on his past experience, he grabbed the puppet by the back of its neck. As expected, the puppet's weakness was there. Instantly, the puppet stopped struggling. Then, another black shadow pounced on them. Dima let go of the stiff puppet and reached out. This time, he didn't use his illusory hand. Instead, he copied Lei Xingfeng's technique and grabbed the puppet by the back of its neck. Instantly, the puppet's head was crushed. Lei Xingfeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Master Dima, this requires skill. There is a very small restriction node on the neck. Breaking this restriction node is equivalent to cutting off the puppet's power source." Dima blushed and said, Haha, I was careless. I used too much strength." Lei Xingfeng put away the headless puppet. Even though the puppet's head was broken, its body parts could still be used. Lei Xingfeng swept through the snow and ice while Dima controlled the puppets. Of course, some buildings didn't have any puppets. However, most of the buildings were guarded by puppets. Among them, some puppets had lost their power and were taken away by Lei Xingfeng. There were about 100 buildings in this area. Lei Xingfeng took away about 60 to 70 puppets. According to him, these were enhanced battle puppets. They were much stronger than the puppets that appeared on the battlefield. As for the other items, they found very few. Most of them were household items. There were also some boxes. However, they didn't have time to check them. They divided them and put them away. As for what they were, no one knew. They would only know when they returned. It was like a lottery. Before the lid was opened, no one knew whether the contents were gold or mud. Lei Xingfeng didn't expect there to be anything special in the boxes. He had put away all the puppets he wanted. If there were other good items, it would be a pleasant surprise. If there weren't, he wouldn't be disappointed. It was a pity that this place wasn't the core of the ruins. It was still a building at the edge. Xi and Feng guessed that this should be the place where the guards were stationed. It was normal that he couldn't find anything good. Even so, he still obtained a humanoid doll, a small amount of star python records, and a few boxes that he didn't know what was inside. Soon, they finished searching. After another round, they didn't find anything else. Dima said, "Forget it. Let's end the search. Let the others search carefully." Qing Mu said, "Okay, Elder Dima, let's go back first. I wonder what the other places are like." Chapter 683. Dima said, "We probably only broke the first layer. The second layer might not be broken. Let's go back." The four of them quickly returned to the camp. In the camp, many people were waiting. When they saw the four of them return, they all looked at them eagerly. They all knew that there were countless treasures in the ruins. What did they find this time? Everyone was looking forward to it. Qing Mu said loudly, "All right, let's get people to organize later. We'll split into teams to explore. Everyone knows the rules, so I won't say much." Immediately, everyone cheered. These were the people from the headquarters of the Ming-Zhe Alliance who followed Dima. As for the disciplinary camp, they had already moved far away. Exploring the ruins had nothing to do with them. Of course, there were a few people who stayed, such as Feng Huan and Di Yin. As Lei Xingfeng's guards, they could still stay in the camp. A large group of people sat in Qing Mu's living room. Dima sat in the middle. He said, "We went to the outer buildings of the ruins. Now, we can judge that the ruins should be very dangerous. If we people go in, there might be problems. Therefore, I need everyone to form teams. There's also a layer of restriction. Once it's broken, we'll be the first to enter the ruins. The tasks were quickly assigned. Immediately, people got busy. Of course, this had nothing to do with Lei Xingfeng. Dima said the last barrier. Qing Yin, this is your mission. You have to break it within a certain amount of time. No matter what, we have to be the first to enter. You know the benefits of this. Qing Yin was a little scared of the ruins after the scare in the room. He said, "All right, but I have a request." Dima said, "I know. You want a phone to be your assistant." Qing Yan's face turned red. He nodded and said, "Yes, sir. After all, a phone broke 2 layers of restriction. He knows more about the ruins than I do." Lei Xingfeng stood up and said, "No problem. I'll help Sir Qing Yan." Qing Yan was happy. No matter what, Lei Xingfeng treated him well. In addition, he had helped to promote Lei Xingfeng, so he didn't doubt that Lei Xingfeng wouldn't be willing to be his assistant. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'll give you a portion of the rewards." Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "I don't care about the reward. If I want to break the formation, I want the components and the core of the formation." Green Rock was surprised. Once the formation is broken, most of the components and the crux of the formation will collapse. How can we get them? Lei Xingfeng finally reacted. The other party probably wanted to break the restriction formation by force. He said, "Attack the restriction nodes. I will guide you. How about it?" Bluestone was shocked. Even he might not be able to accurately attack the nodes of the restriction. According to his level, he could only calculate the weak points of the restriction and focus his attacks on them, hoping for the entire restriction to collapse. If he could accurately attack the nodes of the restriction and make it unable to operate smoothly, then that was the level of a restriction great grandmaster. Where did this come from? Lei Xingfeng was at the level of a restriction great grandmaster? What a joke. After a while, Bluestone said, "All right, you will guide me when the time comes. If you can't do it, you still have to listen to my command." Lei Xingfeng said, "Of course. It depends on what kind of restriction it is." Bluestone thought it was very difficult, but he gave this opportunity to Lei Xingfeng to see if he really had such a terrifying level. He wasn't himself. Lei Xingfeng didn't rely on calculation. He directly saw the nodes of the restriction. He didn't need to calculate at all. Plus, he knew the operation of restrictions. Of course, he could accurately find the key nodes. Dama asked, "What's wrong?" Bluestone smiled bitterly and said, "Maybe I'll become your assistant." "Ha!" Dama was startled. He said what? Bluestone said, "I didn't expect a Feng's level to be so high. We'll know when we break the formation." Dama didn't probe further. He nodded and said, "As long as we can break the restriction, I won't ask about the rest." Bluestone said, "Break it. With a phone, it won't be a big problem. But are we really going in first?" He had doubts in his heart. After all, there are only 2 Monarch rank experts. Even if Dama was a mid-level Monarch rank expert, there was still a problem. Who knew what powerful things would appear in the ruins? Dama smiled and said, "We can take advantage of the time difference. Let's go in first and earn some money. This is the reward for going in first." Rather than saying that it was a reward for going in first, it was more like Dama's indulgence. With his current position, he indeed had special privileges. No one dared to object to such privileges. After all, at his position, he could do many things that others couldn't do openly. If Dama advanced to a high-level monarch rank, his words would carry more weight in the Mingzhe alliance. Basically, as long as he said something, no one would dare to object. Of course, there weren't many high-level monarch rank experts in the entire Mingzhe alliance. Most of them wouldn't appear, nor would they be in charge of specific matters. Mid-level monarchs wouldn't be in charge of anything either. It all depended on one's interest. For example, Dama was interested in the ruins. He wanted to gather a few materials that he couldn't find and see if the ruins would appear. He didn't care about other things. The second batch of people would arrive soon. They were all Dama's direct subordinates. Of course, he had to share the benefits with his subordinates. This was a necessary measure for a leader. Otherwise, who would work for him? After resting for a day, Dama brought a group of people to the 3rd layer of the restriction. They were already deep into the snow mountain. They could clearly see the towering cliffs not far away. There were layers of palaces on the cliffs. They could clearly see them from here. Lei Xingfeng stared at the palaces. He realized that the entire palaces were carved out of the cliffs. They were huge and solemn. He estimated that each pillar was 100 meters tall. There were at least 20 pillars in a row. It was a spectacular sight. There were close to 1,000 people in the group. The strength of this group was much stronger than the disciplinary battalion. Not only were their cultivations high, but their organization and discipline were also extraordinary. They were the elites of the Ming-Zhe alliance. Their aura made Lei Xingfeng feel a little uncomfortable. Fortunately, his position was high, so he didn't have to be afraid of these people. Standing beside Dama, Lei Xingfeng carefully observed the terrain and restriction. This was a huge upward slope formed by rocks. All the rocks were under the snow. From the bottom of the slope, one could see the bottom of the dark stone. The entire restriction was shrouded in the rocky area. No one would think of flying over. There must be a restriction that forbade flying, so one could only walk over the rocky slope. And to walk over the rocky slope, they had to pass through a restriction that had been set up long ago. Lei Xingfeng's eyes could see that this restriction was so complicated that it made him dizzy. It was full of nodes. Lei Xingfeng realized that this was another compound restriction. He couldn't help but facepalm and let out a long sigh. Dama asked, "What's wrong?" Lei Xingfeng smiled bitterly and said, "It's another large-scale compound restriction formation. It's very complicated." Until now, he couldn't even tell what kind of restriction it was. He said, "It's a compound restriction?" Xi and Feng looked at him strangely and said, "That's right. It's a very complicated restriction. I can't tell how many restrictions it's made up of." Dama asked, "Qing Yan, can you tell?" Qing Yan said, "I need time. And I need people to charge at the formation. I need to see the reaction and changes. Then I can make a guess. Whether it works or not depends on the result." He complained in his heart. This restriction was too complicated. Especially with so many rocks on the ground, it interfered with his judgment. Dama said, "Is that so? Okay, you can command. What do you need to do? Everyone, including me, will listen to your orders." Qing Yan said, "I don't need too many people for now. 100 or so will do." "All right, forget about those who are below mid-level Dao Lord." Lei Xingfeng was dumbfounded. Forget about those who were below mid-level Dao Lord. Ever since he came to the Bright Lake Alliance, he had seen a few sovereign kings. To be honest, he hadn't seen many cultivators above mid-level Dao Lord. He didn't expect Qing Yan's requirements to be so high. Dama frowned and said, 100 or so. I'm afraid we can't gather that many. We can gather 80 or 90. Even if there were 80 or 90 of them, Xi and Feng would still be shocked. This was too scary. His own secret sect didn't even have a single mid-level Dao monarch, but here there were 80 or 90 mid-level Dao monarch old ancestors. Thinking about it, the future of the secret sect wouldn't be easy. Qing Yan sighed and said, "All right, 80 or 90 it is. Then we'll leave 100 or so people behind to help. If we do that, there might be casualties." Dama said without hesitation, "Then send people from the disciplinary camp. My people can be injured, but they definitely can't die." Qing Yan nodded and said, "Okay, then send people from the disciplinary camp." They were just cannon fodder anyway. He didn't care who they were. Since they were Dama's trusted subordinates, then the disciplinary camp would do the killing. Soon, cultivators from the disciplinary camp arrived. There were more than 100 Dao Lord Patriarchs. Their faces were pale. They didn't want to come, but this was an order from the elder of the Bright Lake Alliance. They couldn't resist at all. Dama said, "I'm sending you here to investigate this forbidden formation. This is a mission that must be completed. If you die, then so be it. If you come out alive, I promise that I'll release you after completing the mission and give you a spot to enter the Bright Lake Alliance. This is the condition. If you don't do your best, I believe you know the consequences." It was a blatant threat and at the same time, an absolute temptation. Feng Hung and Big, I felt lucky. If they were still in the disciplinary camp, they believed that they wouldn't be able to escape from this mission. Lei Xingfeng asked curiously, "Lord Qing Yan, how do you plan to investigate?" Qing Yan said, "Forcefully investigate." With that, Lei Xingfeng immediately understood that he wasn't any weaker than Qing Yan. In fact, he was even stronger. Chapter 684. Lei Xingfeng might not be as knowledgeable as Qing Yin in other aspects, but Lei Xingfeng was much more knowledgeable than him when it came to unfamiliar restrictions. Lei Xingfeng knew that Qing Yin could not understand the restriction in front of him at all. Someone had to examine it and see how it worked and reacted. Only then could they deduce it bit by bit. Lei Xingfeng did not want to steal Qing Yan's limelight. He said, "Then we'll examine it by force." Qing Yin knew that Lei Xingfeng was very powerful. He said, "Do you have any suggestions?" Lei Xingfeng pulled Qing Yin to squat down and gently drew a simple map on the snow. He said, "Here and here should be the places with the most nodes. Once we touch here and here, these 3 places will be able to reflect the characteristics of this restriction to the greatest extent." Qing Yin looked once. He raised his head and said softly, "A phone. How did you know?" Lei Xingfeng also whispered, "This restriction is similar to the previous one. Although it's more complicated and perhaps more powerful, the overall structure of the restriction is very similar. No matter if it works or not, let's test it first. Anyway, there's no harm in being careful." Qing Yin nodded and continued softly, "Are you in command? Or am I in command?" Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Lord Qing Yin, of course you'll be in command." I'm just an assistant." Qing Yin nodded and smiled. "You rascal. All right, I'll be in command. Remind me at any time." Lei Xingfeng said, "No problem." The two of them discussed for a while and decided on the members and composition of the scouting teams. There would be a total of 3 teams, with only 30 people. Each team would have 10 people, and all of them would be expert cultivators. The leader would be a peak-level Dao Lord Patriarch who was just one step away from becoming a sovereign king. These people all had extremely high statuses in the Bright Marsh Alliance. According to Lei Xingfeng's arrangement, the entry points that the 3 teams chose were the weakest points of the restriction. Lei Xingfeng was in charge of one team. Of course, he wouldn't enter the restriction array. Instead, he would command from the edge of the restriction array. Another team was under the command of Qing Yin. Another team was under the command of a restriction master that Qing Yin had brought along. Lei Xingfeng commanded a team of 10 people. He had to do his best to investigate the changes in the restriction and try his best to protect the lives of these people. It should be known that a compound restriction formation would often launch waves of attacks. If he didn't command it well, it was possible for the entire team to be wiped out. Before the formation was activated, no one knew how powerful it was. Even if Lei Xingfeng could see the formation's nodes and speculate about its weaknesses, he still didn't know how powerful it was. This was also why he needed people to go in and investigate the formation before he cracked it. The logic was the same. Following the order, Lei Xingfeng's team carefully stepped into the restriction array. Under the command of Lei Xingfeng, the team of 10 people slowly moved forward. Lei Xingfeng wanted to prevent them from touching the formation's nodes as much as possible. This way, they could avoid activating the formation immediately. However, he forgot that the other 2 teams didn't have abnormal eyes like him. Therefore, the other 2 teams quickly triggered the restriction array and activated it. The invisible strangling force suddenly increased. Lei Xingfeng was quite familiar with this force. It was the same strangling force from the previous restriction array. It was invisible and powerful. Lei Xingfeng could only command this team to avoid being strangled by this force. At this moment, Lei Xingfeng realized that the strength of this compound formation was quite abnormal. If he went in, once the formation was activated, he would probably be killed in an instant. He wouldn't even have the chance to escape. A series of orders were given, mainly to move and attack. The team trembled as they obeyed the orders. They didn't dare to be careless. A single mistake could ruin the whole team. Following Lei Xingfeng's orders, the 10 people gradually moved forward. Attack to the left. Focus fire. The 10 people were already used to Lei Xingfeng's orders. They immediately focused fire to the left. They couldn't see anything, but Lei Xingfeng could see clearly that the formation's nodes released their power. However, this power didn't have any power at all. If they waited for another 10 seconds, its power would increase by 100 times. In less than 5 minutes, the team under Qingyin's command was trapped. They formed a circle and madly attacked outwards. However, the pressure was getting stronger and stronger. They couldn't even move an inch. The other team was even worse. They walked less than 100 meters before being trapped in place. The restriction Grandmaster's face was covered in sweat. Everyone could see the anxiety on his face clearly. Only Lei Xingfeng's team was still moving forward. However, their speed was extremely slow. This was because under Lei Xingfeng's orders, they had to change directions and focus fire from time to time. This restriction formation was very strange. Looking inside from the outside, they couldn't see any changes when the restriction formation was activated. Only the people inside could feel the invisible power. It was like a huge meat grinder. Once you couldn't resist it, you would immediately turn into a bloody mist. One of the teams had already suffered casualties. A guy who stood in a bad position shouted. Then, in everyone's eyes, this person was instantly crushed into powder by an invisible hand. It was as if there was a bomb in his body. With a boom, a bloody mist rose. His body didn't even have a grain of rice left. Everyone who saw this felt a chill in their hearts. It was too King scary. Once someone died, it wasn't just 1 or 2 people, but 10 people. They died continuously. Dima immediately became anxious. He shouted, "Tell them to come back." Green Rock's team also suffered casualties. However, he was a restriction grandmaster after all. He still had a way to deal with it. When he heard Dima's shout, he immediately ordered his team to come back. Lei Xingfeng's team hadn't suffered any casualties so far. However, they were still terrified. This wasn't a place where they could break through with their own strength. Even a peak Dao Lord didn't have the slightest confidence. Green Rock led the team step by step and finally retreated. He was more careful and experienced. Therefore, only 2 people died and 1 was injured. The others looked lucky. They finally returned. The other squad, however, wasn't as lucky. Just now, 3 of them had died, and as they retreated, another 3 had died. The remaining 4 were a Supreme Dao Lord and 3 high-level Dao Lords. They were incredibly strong, and by working together, they were able to resist the attacks of the Grand Formation. However, they were still trapped in place, unable to move at all. Lei Xingfeng's team also suffered a casualty. Fortunately, Lei Xingfeng gave the order very quickly. With a few people attacking together and a few people covering him, he was lucky to survive. After Green Rock retreated his team, he immediately went to the restriction grandmaster. Without hesitation, he took over the command and ordered the 4 surviving team members to retreat. However, as the restriction formation was activated, the 4 of them were in a dangerous place. A large number of restriction nodes surrounded them, and the restriction formation's power became stronger and stronger. Lei Xingfeng retreated his team. He immediately ran to Green Rock's side and said, "No, we can't come back with our own strength. Lord Dima, please help." Dima said without hesitation, "Okay, you command." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "I'll do it." Green Rock sighed inwardly. He took a step back and gave a command to Dima. Under Xinfeng's command, Dima used his powerful strength to forcefully destroy the restriction nodes around the 4 of them, forcefully bringing them out of the large restriction formation. If it wasn't for the presence of such a powerful expert, with the quick activation of the formation, the 4 of them would have been killed by the restriction. This time, Dima, Qingmu, Qingyin, and the others were very surprised because Lei Xingfeng's command was incredible. It was as if he was very familiar with the restriction formation. His command was appropriate and calm, which made the other big shots look at him in a new light. Green Rock said, "Afong, I'm really unfamiliar with this restriction formation. You should command to break the restriction formation." He was completely convinced by the performance of the 3rd team. Lei Xingfeng was much better than him in this aspect. He was not a narrow-minded person, especially when it came to completing the mission. If there was someone better than him to help him complete the mission, why not? Lei Xingfeng said, "I don't have the confidence to break the restriction formation. I still need Master Green Rock's guidance." This sentence made Green Rock feel very comfortable. He nodded and said, "No problem. You can do it. If there are any problems, we could discuss it together." He now understood that Lei Xingfeng's cultivation might not be good, but his understanding of restriction formations was definitely at the level of Grandmaster or even Great Grandmaster. His insight was really a little scary. Dima also saw that Lei Xingfeng's ability was very high. As the saying goes, one should not be afraid of not knowing the value of a restriction formation, but one should be afraid of comparing the value of a restriction formation. At the same time, he commanded the exploration team. In the end, the team under Lei Xingfeng's command didn't lose a single person, while the other two teams lost a few people each. This comparison showed how smart Lei Xingfeng was. He didn't understand restriction formations, but it didn't mean that he didn't know how to judge people. Dima said, "A Feng's command is also good. Well, as long as you can break the restriction formation, you can deploy any personnel and materials." Lei Xingfeng agreed and said, "I still need to explore the restriction formation. I don't understand this restriction formation. After it is activated, I need to see how the restriction formation operates. Only then can I have a chance to break it." This was the standard way to break a restriction formation. Any restriction master would know this. Of course, for some complicated restriction formations, even if you looked at it, you might not be able to find a way to break it. Only a very high-level restriction master could do this. Lei Xingfeng really wanted to get this complex restriction formation in his hands. The premise was that this restriction formation's components and core were intact. He had a huge amount of manpower and super experts. Since he was in charge of it, there was no reason that he couldn't get the two restriction formations this time. Chapter 685. Lei Xingfeng began to think of a way to break the formation. This formation was quite advanced. There were many parts that Lei Xingfeng couldn't understand, but he had a pair of special eyes. He didn't need to calculate to see certain phenomena. Therefore, he asked if he didn't understand. With a restriction grandmaster like Qin Yin, many questions could be answered. Dima waited for a few hours. Seeing Lei Xingfeng and Qin Yin talking nonstop, he was a bit impatient. He said, "When are we going to break the formation?" Lei Xingfeng smiled. "Master Dima, leave some people to protect us. The rest can go back first. We need to figure out some problems. Otherwise, blindly exploring will cost us a lot. This is not the time to rush." Dima agreed. He said, "If that's the case, okay. You guys discuss first. I'll leave enough guards here. When you think a way to break the formation, we'll proceed." Lei Xingfeng nodded. "I need 1 or 2 days." Dima said, "Okay, we'll come back tomorrow." Then, he ordered his subordinates to leave behind more than 200 experts. Then, he left with a large group of people. Qin Mu also left. Before leaving, he said to Qin Yin, "When this mission is over, I have something to talk to you about when we return to the Mingzhe Alliance." Qin Yin said, "Okay, brother, you go first. Come back tomorrow. Maybe you'll find a way to break the formation." Qin Mu left. Lei Xingfeng took out a page of the Star Python record and recorded the nodes and changes of the formation. He said, "Master Qin Yin, you can add to this." Qin Yin took the Star Python record and looked at it. He couldn't help but be shocked. He said, "You guessed so much?" Only then did Xine Feng react. What he had recorded wasn't just a point, but also the nodes and movement paths that he could see. It wasn't something he had guessed. He spoke, "That's right." At this moment, he couldn't deny it. After all, it was all recorded in the Star Python record. Qin Yin sighed with emotion. This was too amazing. He had only memorized a small portion of the nodes. After looking at it carefully, he could only add a small portion. He said, "With this map, it will be much easier to break the seal." "That's great. I think after another exploration, I should be able to grasp most of the secrets of the seal." Lei Xingfeng said, "What do the other restriction masters think?" Qin Yin brought a team of restriction masters. He waved his hand to call them over. At the same time, he introduced, "This is restriction master Lei Xingfeng. Everyone should know about his methods and knowledge of restriction. In some aspects, a Feng is better than me. Everyone come and meet him." The group of restriction masters bowed respectfully. Lei Xingfeng's excellent method of commanding the exploration just now was unfathomable in everyone's eyes. Especially Master Dima and Master Qin Yin. Both of them admired him. They were restriction masters and knew the difficulties. They bowed with admiration. After passing the Star Python record to the restriction masters, Qin Yin said, "If there's anything to add, you can mark it on the diagram." After one round, Lei Xingfeng checked the Star Python record again. He was disappointed to find that there wasn't much new information. He said, "Master Qin Yin, let's make a deduction. With so many nodes and changes, then according to the rules of the restriction, he could deduce the movements of most of the nodes, and through analysis, he would be able to find the core of the restriction. According to Xian Feng's method of breaking the restriction, he would have to find the core of the restriction and obtain it to stop the restriction's movements. The advantage of this was that Lei Xingfeng could obtain the structure of the formation. After modifying it, he could still use this formation in the future. It was not easy to make a formation, especially a large-scale compound formation. It was even harder to make. It was not only a matter of materials, but also a matter of design. Lei Xingfeng, Qin Yin, and the restriction master who was in charge of the other exploration team was called Master Yuan. He was a very cautious person who didn't have much of a presence. The three of them were trying to deduce the formation together. After all, Master Yuan was also a restriction master, although he was the weakest at the moment. One restriction formation plus another restriction formation was a double restriction formation. When three restriction formations were combined together, it could be called a compound restriction formation. If there were four restriction formations, and one of them was the main formation, it would be a large-scale compound restriction formation. This kind of formation was at a very high level. Now, they had already deduced that there were four restriction formations in this compound restriction formation. However, there was still a sign that there might be a hidden restriction formation. Of course, they still couldn't find any trace of the main restriction formation. Qin Yin sighed and said, "We are missing two formations. Otherwise, this formation can't be explained. We have only scratched the surface. This is so annoying. Why is this formation so complicated?" Lei Xingfeng also admitted that this formation was super complicated, but he was still confident that he could crack it. He said, "As long as we test it again, I believe we can grasp the key. We don't need to wait for Master Dima. We can send our own people to test it. I will be the commander." Feng Heng and Big I were beside him. When they heard this, they couldn't help but shrink their necks. They were the strongest among Lei Xingfeng's guards. When they heard Lei Xingfeng's words, they instinctively knew that no one else would go. It must be the two of them. As expected, Lei Xingfeng turned around and said, "Feng Heng, Big Eye, what do you think? You two go." Feng Heng and Big Eye were afraid. If it was a fight, they wouldn't hesitate. However, to be honest, they didn't have the courage to test the formation. After becoming Lei Xingfeng's guards, they couldn't refuse this job. The two of them looked at Lei Xingfeng pitifully. They wanted to beg for mercy, but they didn't know where to start. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but smile. He said, "It's okay. I will control it. I won't let you be in danger." The two of them were unwillingly driven by Lei Xingfeng. They really didn't want to go. In this damn place, they couldn't use their strength. They could be killed by the formation before even seeing an enemy. They wouldn't even know how they died. It was too sad. Standing at the edge of the formation, Lei Xingfeng said, "Master Qin Yin, you are in charge of recording the continuous changes. Master Yuan, you record the other side. Let the other formation masters help with the recording. Whether it is useful or not, everyone has to contribute." Qin Yin nodded and said, "No problem. I will organize everyone. No one will dare to be lazy." Lei Xingfeng began to direct the two of them. The front part had been tested, and the changes were obvious. However, the middle part hadn't been tested. Lei Xingfeng gave Feng Heng a few steel puppet beasts before letting them enter the formation. However, Lei Xingfeng had to guide them. At the front part, the two of them couldn't touch the formation nodes. According to Lei Xingfeng's guidance, the two of them walked meticulously. They walked in zigzags. From time to time, Lei Xingfeng would give instructions, such as jumping or squatting down. The group of cultivators were confused and found it funny. However, Qing Yin and the other formation masters were different. Qing Yin was the first to discover it. He said in amazement, "This is a way to enter the formation without touching it. That's amazing." He knew very well that it was extremely difficult to enter the formation without touching the formation nodes. Even if he had set up the formation himself, he couldn't do it without touching the formation nodes. Very soon, the two of them had gone more than 200 meters deep. The entire formation was quiet, and there were no changes. In other words, the two of them had walked more than 200 meters without triggering the formation. This method was really brilliant to the extreme. Qing Yin couldn't help but mutter, "How did they do it? It's amazing." Master Yuan smiled bitterly. They were both formation masters, but Lei Xingfeng was obviously much better than him. After a while, he thought of a problem and said, "If we don't touch the formation, we won't be able to see the formation's changes." Lei Xingfeng said, "Soon, you will see the changes." When the two of them walked for another 10 meters, Lei Xingfeng found a place with relatively few nodes. This was also the formation's weak point. He said, "Okay, stop here and don't move." Feng Heng and Big Eye immediately stood obediently when they heard the order. They didn't dare to move at all. Lei Xingfeng said, "Feng Heng, turn left. Just turn, don't move." Hearing this, Feng Heng immediately turned to the left, facing the direction of the Snow Mountain Palace. Xi and Feng spoke, "Listen to my orders, throw a steel mannequin beast. Throw it as far as you can. After throwing it, the two of you must crouch down, got it?" Lei Xingfeng didn't dare to be careless at all. He had to explain the order clearly. There couldn't be the slightest mistake. Feng Heng trembled in fear and said, "Remember." Lei Xingfeng said, "Okay, let's start." Feng Heng gritted his teeth and waved his hand. Suddenly, the steel puppet beast appeared and was thrown out by Feng Heng. This guy used a lot of strength. The steel puppet beast was such a heavy thing, but it was thrown 70 to 80 meters away by him. Boom! Before it landed on the ground, the formation began to operate rapidly. When the steel puppet beast landed on the ground, its body was already full of cracks. The steel puppet beast barely took 2 steps before a huge amount of restrictive power suddenly erupted. The strangling power increased sharply. In an instant, the steel puppet beast collapsed like sand. When Feng Heng threw the steel puppet beast, he and Big Eye squatted down. Lei Xingfeng could clearly see the restrictive nodes moving wildly in the direction of the steel puppet beast. The strangling power was also clearly displayed. Qing Yin nervously recorded it down. Feng Heng and Big Eye were standing so precisely that the fluctuations of the formation couldn't detect them. Therefore, the two of them weren't affected or threatened by the formation. Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Don't move. Just squat down. Lower your heads." The two bent over, not daring to move at all as they waited patiently. Their faces were covered with sweat from fear. Even though they were mid-level Downward Patriarchs, they still felt extremely powerless within this grand restrictive formation. Chapter 686. Feng Heng's mission was to continuously move forward, then stop and throw out the steel mannequin beasts, waiting for the formation to react, while Xi and Feng and Qing Yin observed and recorded the changes of the formation. The two of them cooperated very well. The two of them had already entered 500 meters. In Feng Heng's hidden Luin space, there was only one steel mannequin beast left. They had also reached the crucial area. After careful observation, Xi and Feng found where the two of them were standing and moved them there before ordering Feng Heng to throw out another steel mannequin beast. What happened next shocked even Lei Xingfeng. Lightning killing formation. There was even a lightning killing formation. When the steel doll appeared, a thick bolt of lightning struck it. Lei Xingfeng opened his mouth wide and couldn't close it for a long time. Qing Yin was shocked. Lightning killing formation? This is a lightning killing formation. Why is there a lightning killing formation here? Lightning element cultivators were rare. After Lei Xingfeng entered the Mingzhe Alliance, he hadn't seen any lightning element cultivators. In fact, he hadn't seen any lightning element cultivators among the low-level cultivators. The main reason was that lightning element cultivators were too difficult to cultivate. It was already good enough to reach the Taoist rank. It was extremely difficult to reach the Taoist rank. There might be some who reached the Taoist rank, but Lei Xingfeng hadn't seen any. The cultivators here didn't have places like the magnetic storm mountains to cultivate. Lightning element cultivators had a huge flaw, which was that lightning element materials were relatively rare. The higher the level, the harder it was to find lightning element materials. Suddenly seeing a lightning killing formation, this thing couldn't be made by a lightning element restriction master. This meant that there was at least a high-level lightning element cultivator in this ruin, and he was also a restriction master. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to make a lightning killing formation. None of the restriction masters in the restriction main hall could make a lightning killing formation. Although this formation was very famous, to make a lightning killing formation, one had to be a lightning element cultivator. This was because the lightning element was too special. The violent lightning bolts and the power of the restriction had reduced the steel doll to dust before it even hit the ground. Finally, Lei Xingfeng and Qin Yin let out a sigh of relief when they finally found the last hidden forbidden formation. As long as they could find all the forbidden formations, they would be able to deduce the layout of the entire complex forbidden formation in the core of the formation. Only then would they be able to break the formation. When the entire array stopped operating, Lei Xingfeng instructed the two of them to retreat bit by bit. Qin Yin asked, "Is the record complete?" Lei Xingfeng commanded the two of them to retreat while saying, "Let's wait for them to come back first." Qin Yin nodded, "All right." Master Yuan smiled bitterly and said, "I didn't memorize too many restriction nodes. The changes are truly too fast." Qin Yin said, "This is because you are too unfamiliar with this complex forbidden formation. Actually, you don't have to record the changes of the entire formation. Just remember some parts will be enough." About 2 hours later, Feng Heng and Big I retreated with sweat all over their foreheads. After the two of them walked out of the array, it was as if they had just returned from hell. Their legs were weak because they were scared. Sitting in the snow, the two of them took a long time to recover their strength. Feng Heng kept shaking his head and said, "It's really scary. This feeling of not having our lives in our hands is really terrible." Big Eye clenched his hands tightly. Traces of trembling could be seen. His hands kept shaking as he said, "It's really exciting. I thought I wouldn't be able to come back." Lei Xingfeng said, "As long as you listen to my orders, you will be fine." Feng Heng said, "I didn't even dare to mishear a single word." Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but chuckle. He was proud to be able to see two Dao Lord Patriarchs, and mid-level Dao Lord Patriarchs at that, scared to such an extent. Restrictions were very mysterious. A low-level restriction might be nothing. A high-level restriction might be able to deal with or even break it. However, a complex forbidden formation could easily kill a mid-level Dao Lord Patriarch. This was why restriction masters had such a high status. This was especially true for high-level restriction masters. This was because the formations they set up could kill high-level cultivators or powerful outsiders on a large scale. Qin Yin handed the Star Python record to Lei Xingfeng and said, "I'll record the changes. You fill in the gaps." Lei Xingfeng took the Star Python record. Qin Yin recorded very little about the changes of the Thunder Killing formation because he wasn't familiar with it. Lei Xingfeng said, "All right, as long as you record the changes of the Thunder Killing formation, we can begin to speculate." Master Yuan had also recorded some changes, but it could be seen that he had only recorded the hard changes. With a single glance, it was clear that he did not understand the array at all. As for Qin Yin, his level of recording was clearly much higher. He had even marked out some key areas. The difference between the two was clear at a glance. It was as different as heaven and earth. Lei Xingfeng didn't say much. He quickly began to mark and record. Every time he recorded, he understood a bit more about this complex forbidden formation. Because he had cracked a complex forbidden formation last time, he had already figured out some of the rules of this type of restriction. The two calculated until the sky turned dark. This forbidden formation was very complicated. Their work was like the reverse engineering that Lei Xingfeng had seen in his previous life. They looked for the core of the restriction in the reverse direction. This workload was a bit heavy. Even when Dima brought people over, the two were still discussing. Dima came in front of the two and said, "How is it? Do you have any idea?" Qing Yin said, Almost. This thing is a bit complicated. We're almost done." Master Yuan couldn't get a word in. He felt a bit inferior. They were both restriction masters, but why was the gap so big? He was quite convinced by Lei Xingfeng's restriction knowledge. In his opinion, Lei Xingfeng wasn't worse than Master Qing Yin. Most of the time, Qing Yin also needed to listen to Lei Xingfeng's speculations. After a few more words of discussion, Lei Xingfeng stood up and said, "Master Dima, we need your help this time." "All right, Master Qing Mu also needs the help." Dima and Qing Mu nodded. This kind of matter of breaking a formation couldn't be avoided without their help. After all, they were the strongest and had the highest cultivation. Qing Yin said, "Following this path, we should be able to find the core of the restriction." Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Yes, I also calculated that there must be it in these few places." Dima said, "How can we help?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Master Dima, Master Qing Mu, and I will enter the restriction formation." In other words, only the three of us can break the formation. Dima was surprised. "Only the three of us?" Qing Yin said, "Yes, Master. If anyone else goes in, they will die. If two masters go in, they will be enough to protect a foe. Let a foe break the formation. As long as he can reach the correct location, he can break the formation." Dima smiled and said, Okay. Brother Qing Mu, it seems that there is no one else in the Ming-Zhe alliance. We two elders have to do it ourselves." Qing Mu also smiled and said, "Won't this merit be greater? Haha, then let's go with the little guy." Lei Xingfeng said, "Once the formation is broken, I don't know what will come out of it. It's best that we set up another restriction formation outside the restriction formation. This can slow down the impact and give us time to prepare." Dima clapped and said, "Yes, that's a good idea. Brother Qing Mu, what do you think?" The people brought by the two elders were not the cannon fodder of the disciplinary camp. The death of any one of them would cause some trouble. The last time they investigated, many people died. This caused Dima and Green Rock to be heartbroken. There would be a lot of trouble when they returned. The death of one person from the headquarters of the Ming-Zhe Alliance was a huge matter. Therefore, Lei Xingfeng's suggestion was immediately praised by the two elders. With the restriction formation, no matter what came out of the relic, there would be a restriction formation to stop it. This would avoid a large-scale battle and have a lot of room to maneuver. Dima said, "Just set up the formation. All the materials will be provided by the headquarters of the Ming-Zhe Alliance." He was not stingy at all. Qing Yan's eyes flashed with joy. Dima's promise meant that he could get a lot of materials that he wanted but couldn't before. It was worth it to get a few more of such good things. Lei Xingfeng didn't expect this either. He originally planned to use the restriction formation he got last time to set up a new one and reverse the direction. Now it seemed that he had to set up a new restriction formation with Qing Yin as the leader. He didn't fight for it. After all, Qing Yin couldn't take all the benefits by himself. He would definitely share some with him. As expected, Qing Yin said, "A phone. I have a ready-made restriction formation here. It's almost done. Let's go together." Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Okay." Qing Yin took out a pile of seal components that he had already refined. He smiled and said, "I still need a few more seal components, so I don't need your help. I'll just refine them. Later, when I'm setting up the formation, you and Master Yuan can come and help." Lei Xingfeng said, "No problem. Can you show me the diagram of this restriction formation?" Qing Yin handed Lei Xingfeng a page of the Star Python record. He smiled and said, "I designed this in my spare time. It's a compound restriction formation. It's not very powerful, but it's very good for delaying attacks." Lei Xingfeng walked to the side to read it. This compound restriction formation wasn't very complicated. It was much worse than the formation in front of them. However, its power was good. It wasn't a strangulation formation. Its main function was to delay the enemy as Qing Yin said. It should be very useful. After a while, Lei Xingfeng memorized the entire formation in his mind. This kind of formation was easy to memorize as long as one understood restrictions. There were some small tricks that inspired Lei Xingfeng. As his knowledge increased and he came into contact with more restrictions, Lei Xingfeng's understanding of restrictions deepened. Soon, Qing Yin finished making the last few restriction components. Qing Yin, Lei Xingfeng, and Master Yuan assigned tasks. The three of them quickly set up the restriction formation. This kind of task of setting up restrictions according to the diagram was very easy. Lei Xingfeng brought a few restriction masters to help set up the formation. Chapter 687. The three of them led a group of restriction masters. It took them less than half a day to finish setting up the entire restriction formation. Everyone retreated into the restriction formation and stood in a suitable position to wait. Lei Xingfeng, Dama, and Qing Mu came back to the edge of the restriction formation. Qing Yin had already gone back to preside over the restriction formation. Everyone was in the formation, except for Lei Xingfeng and the other two, who were still at the edge of the restriction formation. Dama said, "What should we do?" "I'll listen to you." Qing Mu also said, "What should we do?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Follow me into the restriction formation first. I need your protection. Once the restriction formation is activated, you must block the strangling power of the restriction formation. Protect me and let me break the restriction formation." Dama said, "Okay, I'll protect you." Lei Xingfeng said, "Okay, let's go in." He took the lead and walked into the restriction formation. He had no other choice. Only by using his method could they get the complete restriction formation components and the restriction formation. By the way, they could break the restriction formation. This was his unique method of breaking the restriction formation. Dama and Qing Mu looked at each other. The two of them followed Lei Xingfeng into the restriction formation. Lei Xingfeng said, "Follow me. Move in the same way." This was to avoid touching the restriction formation's nodes, so as not to trigger the restriction formation's reaction. In the entire restriction formation, the restriction formation's nodes couldn't be seen. However, Lei Xingfeng had a pair of abnormal eyes, so he could see them clearly. This gave him a great opportunity to avoid touching the restriction formation's nodes. Generally speaking, touching a few restriction formation wouldn't trigger the restriction formation. If there were too many, the restriction formation would react violently. This was the so-called critical point. As long as the critical point wasn't exceeded, theoretically, one could move in the restriction formation. Lei Xingfeng was very careful. He still had to coordinate with the two experts behind him who didn't know anything about restriction formations. Not only could he not touch the restriction formation's nodes, but Dama and Qing Mu also couldn't touch the restriction formation's nodes. Currently, he needed to reach the location of the restriction formation's nodes that he calculated. This was a winding road. If he couldn't see the restriction formation's nodes, he wouldn't be able to reach this location. In Qing Yan's eyes, Lei Xingfeng and the other two's movements were extremely precise. After entering more than 100 meters, they were still moving left and right. It was as if they weren't affected by the restriction formation at all. He admitted that he couldn't do this. It was too powerful. He couldn't figure out how Lei Xingfeng could do this. Generally speaking, in a restriction formation, if you had the restriction formation's token, you would be able to touch the restriction formation's nodes without triggering it or being attacked. However, under the situation of not triggering the restriction formation without a restriction formation's token, this method was indeed extremely brilliant. Seeing the three people getting further and further away, Qing Yin couldn't help but shake his head. Master Yuan said, "Master Qing Yin, I can't do this. It's simply incredible." Qing Yin said, "I can't do it either, so don't be discouraged. This should be a Fang's unique skill." Master Yuan said, "If I could do this, I could become a restriction formation grandmaster. This is too amazing." Qing Yin said, "Amazing. We went down more than 100 meters, but the restriction formation didn't move at all." At this time, Lei Xingfeng was already near the first restriction formations node. The restriction formations nodes here were relatively sparse. The restriction formations nodes in front were relatively denser. If they walked over like this, it was impossible to not touch the restriction formations nodes. Therefore, they had to go around to the back. Advancing and retreating, twisting and turning, this path was simply torturous. Even a super expert like Dama was sweating. He said it's really not easy. As he spoke, he imitated Lei Xingfeng's actions. He slowly moved sideways a few steps before squatting down and moving over bit by bit. Soon, Lei Xingfeng arrived at the restriction formations node. He waved his hand and said, "Wait for me here. If the restriction formation activates, you guys have to snatch me out." Dama smiled and said, "No problem. Don't worry and do it boldly." Lei Xingfeng squatted down, and a small steel shovel appeared in his hand. This was something he refined when he had nothing to do. Because there were relatively many restriction formations nodes in the surroundings, he couldn't use his illusory hand to dig. He used the small shovel to clear the snow on the ground bit by bit and slowly dug down. The surface of the snow here was looser. However, after digging down a foot, what was below was no longer snow but ice. Because of his cultivation, Lei Xingfeng's strength was extremely great. Therefore, even the ice couldn't stop him from digging. Gotcha sounds rang out as the small shovel danced. Very quickly, he dug down to 3 feet, revealing a black object. Lei Xingfeng knew that this was one of the restriction formations nodes. There were still many restriction formations nodes in the surroundings. However, Lei Xingfeng's face already revealed a smile. He extended his hand and pressed down on the black restriction formations node. In an instant, it was sucked into his hidden lens space. Immediately, a hole appeared below. The surrounding restriction formations nodes disappeared along with the restriction formations node. The entire formation suddenly started to operate. Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Everyone come closer. Let's not move." The 3 of them leaned against each other and waited quietly. Lei Xingfeng knew that once a restriction formations node was missing, the entire formation would adjust. However, the formation's power would quickly decrease. Every time a restriction formation's power was dug out, the formation's power would decrease by 1 level. However, it wouldn't stop operating because of this. After waiting for a full 20 minutes, Lei Xingfeng discovered that the restriction formations nodes had started to stabilize. He needed to re-observe and re-speculate to find the second restriction formations node. Sitting in the snow, Dama and Qing Mu squatted beside him. There were even fewer restriction formations nodes around them. Therefore, the 2 of them could still move a little. Of course, it was limited to stretching their arms and kicking their legs. They didn't dare to move. However, the 2 of them felt much more comfortable. One must know that along the way, the postures they used to walk were all strange. Lei Xingfeng knew that they were avoiding the restriction formations nodes. However, the 2 of them didn't know that. They could only imitate him. That laborious walk really made one anxious. After carefully calculating twice, it was fortunate that he was only looking for the next restriction hub. Adding the previous one, he was confident that he would be able to find the second restriction hub. Only, according to the changes in the formation, Xi and Feng was even more confident of finding the second restriction hub. Lei Xingfeng narrowed his eyes and looked around for a moment. After calculating the route, he said, "Follow me." Dama and Qing Mu followed Lei Xingfeng and continued to walk in the formation. Dama whispered, "I've never walked like this in my life. I've learned something new. Walking like this can actually make a restriction formation ineffective. That's really impressive." Qing Mu said with a little emotion, "Yeah, a Feng is really impressive." He had asked Qing Yin in private before and knew that Lei Xingfeng's level was extremely high. However, he didn't expect it to be to this extent. The 3 of them walked around in circles. Suddenly, Lei Xingfeng stopped and said, "Go back. This path won't work. We'll be unlucky." Dama said, "What's wrong?" Lei Xingfeng said, "The formation has changed. The original path won't work." Then, he turned around and walked back. This time, they spent a lot of time. The sky gradually darkened. Lei Xingfeng finally walked to the second restriction formations node. He took out his small shovel and continued to dig. When the second restriction formations node was taken away by Lei Xingfeng, the entire structure of the formation was actually destroyed. The formation could still work, but its power was greatly reduced. Looking at the sky and the formation, Lei Xingfeng knew that they could only get so many restriction formations nodes today. They could only come back tomorrow. He said, "That's all for today. We're going to leave." Dama said, "If we follow the way in at the beginning, it will take half a day, right?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Master Ma, you just need to grab onto me and charge out." At this time, the formation's power is greatly reduced. It can't stop you at all. Dama said happily, "That's not a problem." Then, he grabbed on a Lei Xingfeng's collar and rushed out. Qing Mu followed closely behind. Suddenly, the entire formation was activated. Wave after wave of attacks were launched. However, Dama and Qing Mu didn't care at all. The two of them only spent a few seconds to rush out of the formation. Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Put me down." Dama gently flung Lei Xingfeng away. He immediately stood still and stared at the operation of the formation. He wanted to take this opportunity to find the third restriction formations node. Soon, the formation stopped operating because there was no resistance and no restriction formations node was activated. However, such a change in the formation gave Lei Xingfeng a chance to find the third restriction formation. He even had a chance to see the main restriction formations node. Of course, he had to go back and calculate. Lei Xingfeng sat in the same place, holding a page of the Star Python record in his hand. Qing Yin sat beside him. The two of them started to calculate again. After removing two restriction formations nodes, the formation's power was greatly reduced. In addition, the entire restriction formations nodes had changed greatly. The two of them needed to figure out the changes. This way, tomorrow's work wouldn't be so troublesome. After a whole night, Lei Xingfeng stood up and said, "I always feel that this restriction formation isn't that simple. I just can't figure out what's wrong with it." Qing Yin smiled bitterly and said, "Yes, I also feel that there's a problem. It's too easy. Such a complex restriction formation shouldn't be so easy to break." Lei Xingfeng said, "No matter what, we have to break this formation." Dama and Qing Mu came to him. Dama said, "How is it? Can we break it today?" Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "It shouldn't be a problem." Dama said, "Good. Let's go in." Lei Xingfeng agreed and said, "This time, let's go from there." He led the two of them along the edge of the restriction formation. Soon, they arrived at the other end. There was a slanted hillside here. It was also full of rocks, but the rocks here were bigger and more exposed. Chapter 688. The third restriction was in the rubble. This was something Xian Feng and Qing Yin had determined together. Although they couldn't pinpoint the exact location, the third restriction's core was definitely here. This was because there were some restriction nodes that couldn't be seen. They were all hidden behind the boulders. Xian Feng had to see them to confirm his conjecture last night, so he had to enter the formation to make a decision. The three of them once again walked awkwardly. They could clearly go straight, but Lei Xingfeng had to go around a few times. Dima and Qing Mu were already used to this. The two of them strictly followed Lei Xingfeng's posture. For example, if Lei Xingfeng squatted, the two of them would squat. If Lei Xingfeng moved sideways, the two of them would move sideways. Soon, the three of them entered the boulders. The people outside could see them from time to time. In less than 2 hours, Xian Feng calculated as he walked with difficulty, trying his best to find a suitable path for himself as well as the core of the restriction. The third restriction hub was quickly found. He used a small shovel to dig it out and quickly put it into his hidden Lun space. At this time, the entire formation was already weakened. Even if the formation exploded, Dima and Qing Mu could easily deal with it. Therefore, Lei Xingfeng dug it out very easily. The entire formation only shook a little when the third restriction hub was dug out. Other than shaking off some of the snow on the boulders, there was no other reaction. Lei Xingfeng quickly calculated the fourth restriction hub. As the number of restriction hubs decreased, the restriction nodes in the formation decreased. A large portion of the restriction components lost their function. Therefore, it was much easier to walk this time. They could walk 7 or 8 meters before they had to turn or go around. Demas said, "It's easier to walk." Qingmu also nodded. "Yes, it seems easier to walk." Lei Xingfeng smiled. "The entire formation is about to be broken. Of course, it's easier to walk. If we dig out another restriction hub, the formation will basically be left with the most basic structure. Its power will probably drop to the lowest point. At that time, even if the formation activates, I think I can block it." Dima was immediately happy. "Then why are we still walking so carefully? Let's just break through." Lei Xingfeng said, "We can't break through." Qingmu said, "Why not?" Xi and Feng couldn't say that they didn't understand restrictions. He explained, "Once the restriction is truly touched, it'll be hard to find the core of the restriction, and if you try to force your way in with your level, the entire restriction will probably collapse, and once it collapses, the thing I'm looking for will be gone." What he needed was a complete restriction component and a complete restriction hub. With the strength of these two masters, it would be very easy for them to break this half-damaged restriction formation with brute force. Dima smiled. "All right, since we listened to you from the start, we'll do the same. Let's continue." After many twists and turns, the three of them arrived at the fourth restriction core. After this restriction was dug out by Xi and Feng, the entire formation became strange. After a while of crackling noises, it finally calmed down. Dima asked, "Does this count as the restriction losing its effect?" Lei Xingfeng said, "It hasn't lost its power, but it should have lost its power. Let me take a look." Soon, he found the location of the hidden restriction hub of the Thunder Killing Formation. He said, "Break this restriction again." Hee, there is only one restriction hub left. Basically, this formation has been broken. Dima and Qingmu said at the same time, "Good, good." Lei Xingfeng quickly found the location of the restriction. It was a very hidden place under a huge rock. Lei Xingfeng dug for a while and finally found the location of the restriction hub. He didn't have time to check it out. Even if he was very interested in the restriction hub, he didn't have time to check it out. He directly put it into his hidden Luin space. Dima smiled. "This is the last restriction hub?" Lei Xingfeng smiled. "There's still one big one. The restriction hub is the core of this formation. Even for humans, the restriction hubs are the arms and legs. This restriction hub is the torso and head. It doesn't have much attacking power, but it's a very important part." With this explanation, Dima and Qingmu both understood. The two of them relaxed. Seeing that they were about to break through the restriction array, the ruins would be completely revealed. The two of them were inwardly excited. They were the first group to enter. Perhaps they would be able to find what they needed. At this time, it was very easy to find the main restriction hub. It had to be known that once most of the restrictions were removed, only a single restriction was left. This kind of restriction was a framework and did not possess any threatening power. It was very easy to figure out what it was. With Dima and Qingmu, Lei Xingfeng quickly moved forward. Soon he saw a building. This was a small stone house, also covered in snow. They were already close to the ruins, so they quickly dug. Lei Xingfeng saw a stone door. Dima immediately pressed it lightly, and the stone door shattered into a pile of small stones. Dima said, "I'll go in first." As soon as Dima stepped in, a few shadows pounced on him. He casually slapped them away. Only then did he realize that there were humanoid puppets guarding this place. However, these puppets were no match for Dima. They were instantly smashed into pieces. Lei Xingfeng's eyelids twitched. He wanted to collect them, but he didn't expect Dima to destroy them. After entering the room, they saw a downward passage. Dima continued to go down. After about 6 or 7 meters, they arrived at an underground stone house. There was a stone platform inside, and the restriction hub was placed on top. Lei Xingfeng immediately went up and collected it. He said, "Okay, the entire restriction has been broken." Dima said, "How troublesome." Qingmu smiled. "That's good. We didn't lose anyone." This is the first time I've seen such a method. It's really impressive. When they came outside, it was all quiet. Dima said, "Interesting." After the formation was broken, there was no reaction from inside. Lei Xingfeng smiled. "There's nothing wrong with being careful. We can gather people to go in now." As for the restriction formation outside, Lei Xingfeng didn't care if it was useful or not. He felt that there was nothing wrong with it, so he left it there first. Even if it was useless, it wouldn't be a loss. He could just put it away. Soon, the group passed through the area where the large compound restriction formation was. Lei Xingfeng didn't rush to follow them. Instead, he led a group of people to start looking for restriction components. These are what he wanted. As for the ruins, he didn't think it would be so easy to enter. Just like the Forbidden Land, the ruins were the real, dangerous places. Feng Heng and Big, I led a group of people to start digging. One restriction component after another was found. These were all Lei Xingfeng's spoils of war. Qing Yin had already followed Dima and the others in. Feng Heng whispered, "Brother Lei, aren't we going in? What if the good stuff is taken away? Won't we lose a lot?" Lei Xingfeng smiled. "What's the hurry? Is it so easy to enter?" Before he finished his words, he heard a series of roars coming from the ruins. There were flashes of light and vibrations coming from afar. Feng Heng looked up. Because of the snowy slope, he could only see flashes of light. He couldn't see the battle in the ruins. He said, "I don't know what it is. It seems like they are fighting." Big Eye said, "Hurry up and dig. When it's over, we'll go in." Lei Xingfeng was in charge of marking the place. The others were in charge of digging. Lei Xingfeng had already recorded the restriction components underground in the Star Python record. Most of the locations were guessed, and some were observed. Because the entire restriction occupied a huge area, it was very time-consuming to dig. Fortunately, Lei Xingfeng had determined the location of the components. Once they started digging, their speed was still very fast. This was a complete compound restriction formation. Its power was enough to give even monarch rank experts a headache. Therefore, Lei Xingfeng had to get his hands on this treasure no matter what. Compared to entering the ruins to look for unknown treasures, this was the treasure he wanted. The battle in the ruins was in full swing. Lei Xingfeng increased his digging speed. Along the way, Xi and Feng marked the locations as he ran, with a group of people following behind him. Once Xi and Feng marked a location, a practitioner would immediately stay behind to dig while the others would run with him. Those who finished digging would immediately run forward to keep up with the group until it was their turn to dig again. This kind of speed was definitely the fastest. Running back and forth, when Lei Xingfeng ran through the entire area, he had marked all the restriction components. In just a few hours, he had obtained all the restriction components of the entire restriction formation. Lei Xingfeng was very satisfied. In this exploration of the ruins, Lei Xingfeng had gained a lot. He had obtained 3 sets of powerful restriction formations and many humanoid puppets. He had even been pardoned and avoided being punished in the disciplinary camp. Even if he had to go back now, he felt that it was worth it. Keeping the last restriction component, Lei Xingfeng calculated silently. He smiled. "All right, let's go in." The group followed Lei Xingfeng up the snow slope. Standing at the top of the snow slope, they could clearly see the scene in the ruins. Humanoid puppets. A large number of humanoid puppets were running and fighting in the ruins. After that, Lei Xingfeng realized that there were restrictions of all sizes here. They were not the kind of restriction formations, but various kinds of restrictions to protect the buildings. And the humanoid puppets were using these restrictions to fight with the cultivators who entered. Because they were afraid of destroying the ruins, all the cultivators were fighting with their hands and feet tied. The entire scene looked very chaotic from the snow slope. Lei Xingfeng observed carefully. The ruins buildings covered a large area. It was equivalent to a medium-sized city in his previous life. The buildings extended all the way to the cliff in the distance. And on the cliff, there were huge palace-like buildings. Chapter 689. As for the cultivators, they were still fighting outside. They had to clear out the puppets before they could enter the streets. Xi and Feng's focus was on Dima and Qing Mu. These two monarch-level experts probably didn't have much interest in the buildings below. Their target should be the palace on the cliff. That was the place where they could truly make a fortune. Soon, Lei Xingfeng found Dima and Qing Mu's position. The two of them led a few people and had already charged in. They were about to reach a third of the buildings. There were countless puppets blocking them. However, the two of them were really strong. They pushed forward with ease. Only the people behind them could not keep up. Lei Xingfeng shook his head. He knew very well that if he did not follow Dima and Qing Mu, he would not have been able to enter the palace on the cliff. He watched as Dima and Qing Mu led a few people and charged straight in. It was like a knife cutting through everything. Not only were they fast, but they were also very efficient. The people behind them were all blocked. They could only fight bitterly. Feng Hung said eagerly, "Should we go up?" Lei Xingfeng shook his head. "Forget it. If we go in, we're just looking for death. We can't enter the building at all. Let's just wait." Feng Hing thought about it and said, "That's good too. So many people can't enter. It's pointless for us to go." Big Eye said, "What a pity. This is a good opportunity." Lei Xingfeng said, "It's not a good opportunity. If we go now, the chances of us dying are very high." Dima, the Azurewood brothers, and the two supreme Dao Lords. The five of them advanced by leaps and bounds, and any humanoid golems that tried to stand in their way were wiped out by them. All Azure Stone needed to do was keep up with the rest of the group. His job was to break through the barriers, but he didn't actually have to do anything. All he had to do was point out the weak points of the barriers and have the others attack them. Most of the buildings here were restricted, and the streets were also restricted. Many skeletons could already be seen here. Those were people who had died here a long time ago. When the aftermath of the attacks blew away the snow on the ground, one could often see people's skulls or other bones. A large amount of snow was blown away, revealing layers of corpses. Even standing on the snow slope, Lei Xingfeng could see clearly. At this moment, a few puppets saw Lei Xingfeng's group and rushed towards them. Lei Xingfeng did not hesitate to release the thunder-killing array. The 10 puppets quickly spread out and formed a killing array. Lei Xingfeng ordered the others to take up positions safely. Feng Hung and Big Eye stood beside him. As for Baspa and the others, they stayed in the camp and did not follow. One had to have the ability to protect oneself in order to explore here. Seeing the puppets rush in, Lei Xingfeng immediately activated the thunder-killing array. Thunder and lightning struck the puppets, immediately slowing their movements. Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Catch them." Why would he not want good things that were delivered to his door? The thunder-killing array could not destroy the puppets, but it could slow their movements. With Feng Hung and Big Eye's strength, Lei Xingfeng easily caught the puppets. Feng Hung sighed and said, "With the help of the restriction array, we will have no problem protecting ourselves." Xi and Feng looked at the mannequins below with envy. He spoke, "Who's going to lure some mannequins up? Hee. These are all spoils of war. It's a pity to let them destroy them." A Dao Lord said, "I'll go." Lei Xingfeng said, "Two of you go and take turns to cover them. This will be safer. Also, don't attract a bunch of puppets. Just a few will do." Another Dao Lord assented, and the two of them quickly charged downwards. The two of them were not greedy. After all, they were Dao Lord patriarchs. Their running speed was slightly faster than the puppets. They successfully lured the two puppets into the thunder-killing array. Then, they were struck by a series of thunder and lightning. With the help of Feng Hung and Big Eye, they were quickly captured by Lei Xingfeng. Gradually, Feng Hung and Big Eye also saw the secret. They realized that the puppets had two weaknesses. One was the back of the neck, and the other was the chest and abdomen. However, the chest and abdomen were very well protected. As long as someone in front attracted the puppet's attention, it was very easy to catch the puppets at the back of the neck. The puppets could not move as long as they grabbed the back of the neck. As they continued to attract the puppets, even if Xi and Feng didn't do anything, Feng Hung and Big I would still be able to catch quite a few puppets. The others also started to think about it, which was why the next moment, not 1 or 2 puppets were attracted, but at most 7 or 8 puppets were attracted. Just as Lei Xingfeng was catching the puppets, Dima and Qing Mu's team had rushed to the bottom of the cliff and found the entrance to the cliff palace. However, they were blocked at the entrance and could not take another step forward. This was because there was a super strong defensive restriction here that Qing Mu could not break. Dima's frenzied attacks caused a huge tremor. Countless puppets rushed out of the building and charged towards Dima and the others. No matter how powerful Dima was, he didn't dare to stay any longer. They immediately turned around and ran back. Dima and Aoki were at the front, destroying the puppets like they were chopping vegetables. Lei Xingfeng immediately noticed the situation and knew that it was not good. He said, "Let's retreat." Looking at the ant-like puppets on the snowy ground, everyone's heart went numb. There were too many of them. Lei Xingfeng did not even put away the puppet beast. Instead, he led everyone and the puppet beast and ran out. Their destination was the restriction array that Qing Mu had set up earlier. The cultivators also started retreating after hearing Dima's roar. They also started running as fast as they could. Behind them were large groups of humanoid puppets. These were the humanoid puppets that had emerged from the buildings. There were more than 10,000 of them. Dima and the others also felt the danger. There were too many humanoid puppets. Moreover, the quality of the humanoid puppets here was better and stronger. Many of the humanoid puppets were custom-made. Whether it was the equipment or the armor they wore, they were all different. Fortunately, Dima and Greenwood were simply too powerful. With the two of them leading the way, the other two Supreme Dao Lords protected Greenwood as they charged forward. Their mission was to protect Greenwood. As for the battle itself, that was Dima and Greenwood's job. Soon, the five of them broke out of the encirclement and ran back the way they came. With their speed, they quickly caught up with the group. Dima was still shouting, "Run, run, don't King stop, go faster." Dima drove a large group of people into the restriction array, as if he was driving a flock of ducks. After Qing Mu landed, he ran toward the restriction array's core. In a few breaths' time, he arrived and saw Lei Xingfeng looking at him with a smile. Lei Xingfeng said, "You're finally here. Lord Qing Mu, I'll transfer control over this to you." Only then did Qing Mu realize that Lei Xingfeng had full control over the restriction array. He was shocked and asked, "How did you control it?" Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "I'm sorry. Lord Qing Mu showed me the map, so it's very easy to control." Before he could say much, Dima shouted, "Activate the restriction array. Hurry." This time, there were at least 3,000 to 4,000 humanoid puppets. The rest of the humanoid puppets did not follow. Even so, in the eyes of the crowd, there seemed to be an endless stream of humanoid puppets swarming over. Qing Mu immediately activated the restriction array. About a few hundred puppets crashed into the array. The remaining puppets didn't enter the array. Instead, they wandered outside the array for a while. Then, something shocking happened. The puppets turned around and left. The puppets that rushed into the array also fled outside. Only a small number of them were destroyed by the cultivators hidden in the array. The rest escaped. This time, Lei Xingfeng didn't attack. He just watched quietly. Dima and Qing Mu came to Lei Xingfeng's side. Dima said, "There's a defensive restriction array. I don't know if you can break it." Lei Xingfeng shook his head and said, "I saw it from afar, but it was too far away. I couldn't see it clearly, so I don't know if I can break it." Qing Mu blushed and said, "I roughly looked at it, but I couldn't find its weakness. After Lord Dima attacked, I still couldn't see its weakness." The main body of the restriction array is in the middle of the mountain. Only a small part of it is exposed at the entrance. It's hard to find its weakness. Qing Mu sighed and said, "We were just one step away. As long as we went in, it would be easy. What a pity." Dima said, "The building below should be the base of this ancient sect. The palace on the cliff should be the core of this sect. I don't know what treasures there are. We're the first batch to come in. If we can't get in first, all our efforts will be in vain. No, we have to try again." Someone came over to report that the humanoid puppets had all returned to the building. There was no longer a single humanoid puppet on the street. Dima nodded and said, "Continue to send people to the snow slope to observe." A few cultivators ran out and climbed up the snow slope to continue observing. Their mission was to see if there were any changes in the building. Dima said again, "A phone. Are you sure you can break it?" This time, he directly asked. Lei Xingfeng had left a deep impression on him when he broke the restriction array last time. Therefore, he put his hope on Lei Xingfeng. Lei Xingfeng said, "Unless I get closer to observe. But I can't guarantee that I can break it. Even Lord Qing Yin can't do it. I don't know if it will work." Dima said, "Even if it doesn't work, I won't blame you. But I'll only be satisfied if you try." Lei Xingfeng said, "Okay, take me there." Dima said, "Brother Qing Mu, this time it's just the three of us." Qing Yin felt bitter. He knew that if Lei Xingfeng could break the restriction array, then the three of them would go in and wouldn't come back to gather people. Chapter 690. Dima was more impatient. He said, "We've already reached the entrance. We don't have to break through this time. Let's go through my secret door." Qing Yin had already stopped the formation, so Dima quickly opened the secret door and led Lei Xingfeng and Qing Mu to the entrance at the bottom of the cliff. When the three of them arrived at the entrance, the puppets nearby started to attack again. This should be a forbidden area. As long as someone came, the puppets would attack. Qing Mu turned back to defend, and Lei Xingfeng didn't rush to break the formation. Instead, he released his thunder-killing formation. This was the first time Dima had seen such a restriction. When he saw the humanoid beast come out and quickly form a restriction-killing array, he was astonished. This is a restriction-killing array? Amazing. This is so convenient. From the time the puppets were released to the formation of the killing formation, it took less than half a minute. This formation speed was terrifying. With the protection of the thunder-killing formation, it was very easy for Qing Mu to block the puppets. He didn't have to be flustered anymore. He guarded the empty space in front of the entrance and said, "Okay, leave this to me." Only then did Xianfeng focus his attention on the restriction on the door. After carefully examining the nodes of the formation, Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but frown. They were densely packed with nodes, and he couldn't find any weak points. The strongest side of the formation was exposed outside, and the weak points were all inside the entrance. This was a good way to put the strongest side of the formation outside. It would be very difficult to break the formation. Dima saw that Lei Xingfeng was silent, so he asked, "Is this formation hard to break?" Lei Xingfeng nodded. "Yes, it's very hard. There are no weak points," Dima said. "It doesn't matter if it's hard or not. We must break it." He was also anxious. This was the only chance to be first. Once he lost this chance, the good things inside would be taken advantage of by others. Lei Xingfeng smiled bitterly. "I'll try my best." Dima no longer accompanied them. He turned around and went back to kill the humanoid puppets with greenwood. The door looked like it was carved out of jade. The range of this restriction was about 1 meter away from the stone door. Even a super expert like Dima couldn't break through this 1 meter distance. One could imagine how powerful this restriction was. Lei Xingfeng stretched out his hand to touch the stone door, but his arm could only reach about a foot into the stone door. It was as if there was a layer of elastic glue. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't touch the stone door. Numerous restriction nodes were arranged in a dense grid. Although others couldn't see them, Lei Xingfeng could see them clearly. Lei Xingfeng couldn't think of a way to break this grid of restriction nodes. After looking at it several times, Lei Xingfeng still couldn't find a way to break it. Dima and Greenwood moved back and forth, killing the humanoid puppet parts all over the ground. The two of them tacitly stopped urging Lei Xingfeng. They both knew that this restriction wasn't easy to break. Xianfeng searched for the weakness of the restriction, but he couldn't find it. He felt helpless. This restriction was too perverted. Raising his head, he looked at the top of the restriction on the stone door, as well as the left and right sides of the stone door. He noticed that the two sides were also restricted by restrictions. This arrangement was too tight. After thinking for a while, Lei Xingfeng said, "Master Dima, Master Greenwood, I need to go down the cliff and see if there are other passages." Dima said, "Okay." Lei Xingfeng moved with the humanoid puppets, which meant that the thunder-killing array was moving as well. Dima and Greenwood were dumbfounded. This thing could move? It was unbelievable. Lei Xingfeng moved down the cliff bit by bit. At the same time, he observed the restriction nodes. Lei Xingfeng didn't believe it. Even if there was a restriction on the stone door, was there a restriction on the entire cliff? Lei Xingfeng moved down the cliff bit by bit. Dima and Greenwood moved with him. At the same time, they smashed the humanoid puppets. Because of the thunder-killing array, the two of them didn't panic. They gradually reduced the number of humanoid puppets. In just half an hour, 200 to 300 humanoid puppets were smashed. Lei Xingfeng found that there were restrictions on the entire bottom of the cliff. It was full of restrictions. However, he also found that there were some weaknesses in the restrictions. Some places had fewer nodes, which could be used to probe and attack. Letting Dima try a few times to test the restrictions, Xi and Feng quickly thought of a way, which was to find the weak point of the restrictions and forcefully dig a path through the cliff. Since they couldn't go through the main entrance or the side entrance, then they would force their way in from a place that was impossible to enter. Dima broke the weak restrictions while Greenwood quickly dug a big hole. The three of them rushed into the hole. Lei Xingfeng put the thunder-killing array's humanoid puppets into his hidden lune space. Dima and Greenwood smashed a few humanoid puppets that rushed over. The restrictions were completely restored. Those humanoid puppets couldn't break through the restrictions and could only watch as the three of them dug deeper into the cliff. Lei Xingfeng said, "Let's dig upwards." Dima and Greenwood were excited. They didn't think that Lei Xingfeng could come up with such a method. It was almost like cheating, allowing the three of them to enter the core area. Digging into the cliff was much easier than breaking through the restrictions. Lei Xingfeng didn't even need to do anything. He just watched Dima and Greenwood take turns digging. Their speed was so fast that even Lei Xingfeng was shocked. Digging through the rocks was like digging through tofu. Large pieces of rocks were crushed by the illusory hands and quickly thrown behind. A tunnel extended upwards. Lei Xingfeng kept calculating and directing the direction of digging. He guessed that there might be restrictions in the cliff palace. If such restrictions existed, then it was to prevent him from digging. Therefore, he had to find some traces of restrictions to determine the existence of the restrictions. Gradually, Lei Xingfeng saw the restriction nodes. These nodes were all hidden in the rocks. When the rocks were dug out, he knew that they were close to the palace. Some restrictions couldn't be broken by force. Therefore, Lei Xingfeng started to calculate the location of the restriction nodes according to the nodes that appeared. There were a few passages that led to the inside of the palace. However, neither Greenwood nor Dima could break through the restrictions. Lei Xingfeng kept calculating and finally found the location of a restriction node. He attacked it forcefully. Although he didn't take it, he relied on Dima and Greenwood's powerful attacks to break the restriction node. Thus, he broke through the passage and entered the palace. This was an extremely spacious passage. It was 5 meters wide and 3 meters high. The moment the three of them came out, the entire passage was brightly lit. Lei Xingfeng knew that this was a restriction node that emitted light. It was a very advanced method. He only knew about it, but he didn't know how to set up a restriction node that didn't have any attack or defense. Dima smiled and said, "Finally, we are in. Let's go. Let's see what treasures are here." Lei Xingfeng said, "We still have to be careful. We don't know if there are any dangerous traps inside. Wait a minute. I'll use a puppet beast to open the way." As he spoke, he threw out a silver puppet beast. This thing was excellent for opening the way. Even if there was any danger, he wouldn't feel too bad about destroying a silver puppet beast. Dima smiled and said, "You are very careful. Okay, let's follow." This passage was slanted upwards. Greenwood said, "We should still be at the bottom. This place is at most 10 meters above the ground." Xi and Feng calculated the position of the excavation and nodded. "That's right, at most 10 meters, it shouldn't be any higher. This should be the bottom of the palace, above." Before he could finish, he saw a flash of light in front of him, and in an instant, the silver-level mannequin turned into ashes. The three of them stopped in their tracks and realized that there was a large hall in front of them. In other words, the moment the silver puppet beast stepped into the hall, it was turned into ashes by an invisible force. Lei Xingfeng knew that the silver puppet beast's body was relatively sturdy. It was at least harder than steel. Dima immediately stood in front of Lei Xingfeng and said, "Don't worry, I'll go and take a look." Lei Xingfeng said, "Be careful. It should be the power of a restriction." Dima smiled and said, "It's fine. Normal restrictions are useless against me." He had the qualifications to say so, and it was indeed so. Not to mention ordinary restrictions, even high-grade restrictions might not be able to shake him. Once a mid-grade monarch rank expert activated his defense, it would be very difficult for restrictions to hurt him. The three of them stood at the entrance of the hall and carefully observed the situation inside. Lei Xingfeng's vision was different. He could see countless restriction nodes. The restrictions here were a little overpowered, but to Lei Xingfeng, it was not difficult for him. He quickly found the location of the restriction node. It was actually on the long table in the middle of the hall. This was a restriction array that required a restriction token to block. However, Lei Xingfeng relied on his pair of eyes that could see through restriction nodes. He was confident that he could break it. "What a pity," Dima asked. "What's a pity?" Lei Xingfeng said, "It's a pity for my puppet beast. If we found it earlier, we wouldn't have lost it." Qingmu said, "The reward should be greater than losing a puppet beast." Lei Xingfeng said, "Looks like it." He knew that as long as they collected this restriction, it would be worth it. Not to mention losing a silver puppet beast. Even losing a gold puppet beast would be worth it. Dima asked, "Is the restriction here powerful?" Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "It's quite powerful. However, if you want to force your way in, it won't be a big problem. However, once you do, it will cause a chain reaction. It's not worth it." Dima said, "All right, you can break it." Lei Xingfeng agreed and said, "Master Dima, Master Qingmu, please wait here. I will go over." After the previous training, Lei Xingfeng was already very familiar with finding gaps in the restriction nodes. Therefore, his actions were very orderly. He avoided the restriction nodes and found gaps to reach the restriction node. Chapter 691. Seeing Lei Xingfeng's movements, Dima and Qingmu couldn't help but laugh. Although they had followed Lei Xingfeng before, this time it was even more exaggerated. After all, he was a cultivator and his body was very flexible. Lei Xingfeng could do all kinds of twisting movements. His strange way of walking was too shocking. Twisting and turning up and down, Lei Xingfeng walked in a circle and gradually approached the restriction hub. At this moment, Dima and Qingmu felt their breathing quicken. Seeing that Lei Xingfeng was about to succeed, they were really nervous. Just one more step. In front of him were densely packed restriction nodes. It was impossible not to touch them. Xian Feng's face revealed a smile. He knew that he was about to succeed. Suddenly, he took a step forward, his hand already touching the restriction node. In an instant, the restriction node was sucked into his hidden lune space. This was his trump card. As long as he took the restriction hub, then no matter how powerful the restriction was, it would be like water without a source, a tree without a root. The restriction couldn't be activated at all. The restriction of the entire hall had stopped working because the restriction hub had been taken away. Only then did Dima and Qingmu walk in. Dima said, "Kid, not bad. You're really good." Qingmu nodded. "You're almost catching up to my brother. I'm sorry to give you the position of Restriction Master. I think it's appropriate to give you the position of Restriction Grandmaster." Dima agreed. "I think so too. Kid, you're really good." Lei Xingfeng said, "There are a lot of things here. Let's collect them." There were a lot of metal and wooden boxes piled up on the side of the hall. Although many of them were broken, they could see some things inside. Most of them were all kinds of materials. There were also many puppet parts, but there weren't many valuable things. Dima and Qingmu didn't want them, so they all went to Lei Xingfeng. According to Lei Xingfeng, he was just a poor man. Since Dima and Qingmu didn't want them, he would go up and collect them. As for what they were used for, he didn't care. He would just throw them into the Mirror World's warehouse. There would be people who needed them. This should be the hall of the lower floor, richly ornamented and exquisitely made. Xian Feng noticed that the restrictions here were set up at the last minute, which was why he had the chance to break it and obtain this set of restrictions. There were a few passageways at the side of the hall, all of them blocked by stone doors. Dima smashed a stone door with his palm and said, "Let me take a look first." Before he could go in, he saw a black shadow pounce out. Qing Mu and Lei Xingfeng didn't say anything. They just looked indifferently. A puppet like this might be a threat to Lei Xingfeng, but it had no chance against Dima. As expected, Dima kicked, and the puppet exploded in an instant. Lei Xingfeng kept smacking his lips. He felt that it was a pity. The puppets here were very strong. He wanted to collect as many as possible. Unfortunately, Dima didn't care at all. He just smashed the puppets when he saw them. A few of the stone doors were shattered by Dima and Greenwood. After some of the doors were shattered, humanoid figures would appear. However, some of the doors were empty and were just passageways. The three didn't know what to choose. In the end, Dima decided to go up the passage. In this passage, there weren't any destructive restrictions. As they walked up, the surroundings were bright. This was the light emitted by the restriction. It was very gentle. This kind of light was similar to the sunlight outside. When people walked inside, they didn't feel oppressed at all. It was very comfortable. Turning upwards, the three of them arrived at the top of the cliff. This was a wide platform with gigantic pillars. Not a single bit of the wind and snow outside could enter, and the entire platform was as warm as spring. Xi and Feng knew that this was the effect of the restrictions. This was the first floor of the cliff. Xi and Feng had observed it from the outside. The entire cliff had a total of 7 floors, each of which was a few dozen meters tall. The layers stacked on top of each other was a spectacular sight. Their current position was obviously the first floor, about 30 meters above the ground. This cliff was a few thousand meters wide and 400 meters high. It was almost filled with buildings. Some of them had already collapsed, but most of them were still intact. The platform was very big. There were many doors on the side of the cliff. They didn't know where they led to. Since they were here, they had already reached the end. Honestly, breaking in was the right thing to do. Therefore, the three moved together. Dima entered the door with a slap. If he could open the door, then it would be fine. If he couldn't open the door, then he smashed it with a slap. After a round of searching, they found a lot of things. There were all kinds of furniture and some strange sculptures. There weren't many useful things. However, Lei Xingfeng had collected a lot of star python records. This kind of recording tool hadn't changed much since ancient times. Most of the rooms on this floor had been searched, except for the main entrance. The so-called main entrance was a pair of huge stone doors. They were more than 10 meters tall and 8 to 9 meters wide. There were also exquisite carvings on them. 2 slightly protruding star beasts were entrenched on the stone doors. The carvings were very vivid, and every detail was lifelike. Dima pushed hard, but the 2 stone doors didn't move. Lei Xingfeng looked carefully and said, "There is no restriction. There should be something like a latch on the inside of this door." Qing Mu and Dima looked at each other. They raised their hands and clapped at the same time. 2 huge illusory hands suddenly appeared and smashed on the door. Lei Xingfeng's mouth moved. In the end, he didn't say anything. He smiled bitterly. If it was broken, then it was broken. It was a pity that these 2 beautiful doors were destroyed. With a loud bang, the 2 stone doors suddenly shattered and collapsed. A cloud of dust rose up and dissipated after a long while. They walked into the hall. However, it couldn't be called a hall anymore. It should be called a great hall. It was a huge palace with 18 huge stone pillars. The most eye-catching ones were the skeletons of 3 huge star beasts. Lei Xingfeng recognized the one in the middle was the Thunder Star Beast. The huge skeleton on the side should be the Fire Star Beast. The skeleton on the other side should be the rare Broad-Winged Star Beast, which was the Wind Star Beast. Wind, Thunder, and Fire Star Beast skeletons of the 3 attributes were fixed by restrictions. They stood in the great hall vividly. This kind of shocking feeling came straight to their faces. Dima saw it and couldn't help but shout, "Good stuff! Good stuff! It's at least a 10,000-year-old star beast." Lei Xingfeng asked curiously, "What's a 10,000-year-old star beast?" Qing Mu explained, "As the star beasts grow, their strength will also grow. When the star beasts reach the age of 10,000 years, their combat power will reach an extremely high level. Only when the star beasts reach the age of 10,000 years can they truly dominate the world. Lei Xingfeng said, "Don't people often hunt star beasts? Are those 10,000-year-old star beasts?" Dima said, "I can't beat a 10,000-year-old star beast either. The star beasts you're talking about are only a few hundred years old or 1,000 years old. They've just reached adulthood and their strength isn't much. I've killed many star beasts, but none of them are stronger than the star beasts here. The star beasts here are at least 10,000-year-old. Let me take a look." Qing Mu also walked up and said, "These star beasts are at least 10,000-year-old, maybe even 10,000-year-old." Because of the restriction, the three could only walk 10 meters away from the star beast skeleton. When Lei Xingfeng walked under the skeleton, he realized how huge the star beast was. Especially the skeleton of the thunderous star beast. There were electric arcs jumping around and flashing on the skeleton from time to time. Lei Xingfeng was very envious of the complete 10,000-year-old thunderous star beast. He could already feel his Lei Yin jumping inside his body. Dima looked carefully and said, "This thunderous star beast skeleton is really impressive. It has lived for at least 30,000 years. It is very powerful. I don't know how it was killed. The fire star beast is not bad either. It is at least 20,000 years old. As for the wind star beast, it is more than 15,000 years old." Among the three, the wind star beast is the most precious. Lei Xingfeng asked why. Dima said, "The wind star beast is not only rare, but it is also very fast. It is very hard to find. Even if you find it, it is very difficult to kill it. The wind star beast's fighting ability may be average, but when it comes to escaping, it is almost impossible to catch up. Therefore, it is very rare to be able to kill the wind star beast and leave behind its skeleton." Qing Mu said, "There are 3 star beast skeletons in total. Let's divide them. Master Dima, which one do you want?" Dima hesitated and said, "The thunderous star beast can be given to a phone. He is of the thunder element. I want the wind star beast skeleton." Qing Mu didn't argue. He said, "Okay, I want the fire star beast skeleton." Lei Xingfeng was overjoyed. He didn't expect Dima and Qing Mu to be so generous. He thanked them profusely. Dima smiled and said, "Don't be in such a hurry to thank us. You have to remove the seals on the 3 star beast skeletons. You can't damage the skeletons." Lei Xingfeng's eyes were about to burst into flames. This was because of the huge, thunderous star beast skeleton. This thing was big and thick. A huge leg bone was as tall as 5 or 6 people. It would take a few people to wrap their arms around it. The bone's color was very unique. It was dark blue, and some parts of it were so blue that it was black. Electric arcs jumped from time to time. It was very obvious on the bones. Lei Xingfeng said, "Don't worry. I will remove the seals on the bones." To Xian Feng, this kind of restriction was too easy. Very quickly, he removed the restrictions on the bones of the 3 star beasts. When the restrictions were removed, the bones of the star beasts collapsed and crashed onto the ground with loud booms. Dima didn't hold back and said, "Let's take our own." Lei Xingfeng immediately started to collect the bones. From the head to the tailbone, there wasn't a single bone left. Just this thunderous star beast skeleton took up 1/5 of the space in his hidden wind space. Lei Xingfeng felt like he had eaten his fill. His heart was carefree and indescribable. The other things were all helpful. For example, the set of seals and the humanoid puppet. Only the thunderous star beast skeleton could make him strong. It was an excellent material. Chapter 692. After collecting the bones, the 3 of them finally had the mood to inspect the entire hall. On both sides, there were 9 huge stone pillars carved with the image of star beasts. The ground was made of smooth white rocks. There seemed to be a row of things on both sides. Because the hall was too big and the restriction light seemed to have been damaged, the entire hall was rather dark. They could only rely on the light from outside the door. Then, the 3 of them saw that there were also bones on both sides. Strictly speaking, they were insect specimens. There were 2 rows of insect specimens. There were all kinds of strange insects, the largest being 2 to 3 meters tall and 4 to 5 meters long, while the smallest was the size of a wash basin, causing Exine Feng's hairs to stand on end. These insects all had extremely beautiful patterns on them, and when light shone on them, they would shine with dazzling colors, giving off a beautiful yet dangerous feeling. Lei Xingfeng asked curiously, "What is this thing?" Dima's expression became serious. "Gucci insects." "Interesting. There is such a treasure here." Lei Xingfeng asked, "Is it useful?" Dima said, "Unfortunately, this is different from the star bee skeleton. It has been completely refined. Only a layer of shell is left. It is not very useful. It only looks good." Qing Mu said, "I haven't seen many of them. This seems to be from the poisonous insect continent, right?" Dima shook his head. "I don't know. However, I hate insects. Star beasts look cuter." Lei Xingfeng felt his hair stand on end. Such a big insect made him instinctively hate it. He said, "Forget it. I am already very happy to be able to get a complete set of thunderous star beast bones. Let's forget about these insects. Shall we continue?" Dima laughed. "Of course. This is a land reclamation. The first wave is the most profitable. Those who come later will just be leftovers. Let's find something that we missed." "Ha ha." As he spoke, he put away all the insect specimens. They could be handed in. The three of them continued to look for the way up. Following the passage, the three of them quickly went up to the next floor. There were many rooms on this floor. At the same time, they found a large amount of items left behind. There were many useful items. There were various star python records, various materials, and various personal items. The three of them quickly divided them. Some of the items were of little use and were discarded by the three of them. They were all collected by Dima. This was the part that needed to be handed over. No matter what, they couldn't just hand over nothing. They had to put on an act. Along the way, they encountered all kinds of restrictions. Lei Xingfeng broke them bit by bit. At the same time, this fellow also used this opportunity to collect a lot of small restrictions. Just the complete set of restrictions made Lei Xingfeng rich. If he wanted to refine such restrictions himself, he would have to spend a lot of materials. Moreover, he might not be able to find so many materials. As they passed through the passageway, they could see corpses from time to time. It was unknown how many people had died here. Soon, the three of them arrived at the main hall on the second floor. The main hall here was at least twice as big as the main hall on the first floor. In the spacious main hall, there were still 18 huge stone pillars, but the pillars here were thicker, and the main hall was taller. The most eye-catching thing was a huge stone door in the middle of the main hall. Dima said in surprise, "This is an ancient teleportation array, right? It seems to have been damaged." Lei Xingfeng exclaimed, "So many bones of the dead?" Qing Mu said, "It seems like they were fighting over this teleportation array." There were layers upon layers of bones on the ground. There were traces of broken bones on the bones. It could be seen that the battle was extremely fierce. A large part of the outer frame of the ancient teleportation array had collapsed. It should have been destroyed by brute force. Many of the corpses in front of the teleportation array were missing a section. It should have been the legs that entered the teleportation array. As for the other parts, they hadn't gone in. The sudden collapse of the teleportation array caused the parts that went in to disappear. The original white ground had turned dark. There were large patches of dark color, which should have been dyed by blood. The stone pillars near the ancient teleportation array were covered with scars. Because the pillars were also protected by restrictions, the scars on them weren't serious. Even so, there were countless scars left behind. It was a ghastly sight. There were bones scattered all over the ground. There were also all kinds of small things, such as some ornaments, restriction plates, and so on. Lei Xingfeng and the other two searched separately. After all, whatever they found belonged to them. In this hall, according to Exine Feng's estimation, about 600 to 700 people had died. The bones on the ground were piled up, and among them were quite a few weapons. He had also discovered a few sword imprints, but most of them were damaged. Basically, the seals in the body wouldn't appear. Normally, when a cultivator died, their seals would completely collapse. As for the hidden Lua in space, it wouldn't appear either. It would just disappear without a trace. If it was a coincidence, it might suddenly appear. However, the probability of this happening was very small. It was almost impossible to appear. As for the sword seals, they had to be released. Perhaps they could be preserved. If they were left in the seal, then they would collapse together with the seal. There wouldn't even be ashes left. Lei Xingfeng obviously understood this kind of basic knowledge. Therefore, if he saw some damaged sword seals, he would collect them. The materials needed to refine a sword seal were immeasurable. To a cultivator, it was very precious. Damaged sword seals, if they were of the same kind, such as Lei Xingfeng, if he found a thunder-type sword seal, then he could let Lei Yin absorb it. Lei Yin would naturally absorb the useful materials. As for the useless ones, they would also be discarded. This kind of damaged sword seal was good stuff. After reaching the monarch rank, the sword seal's form would change greatly. Using Qing Mu as an example, his sword seal wasn't called a sword seal. It was called the Sword King's seal. Its power was completely different from a sword seal. However, cultivators at the monarch rank rarely used the Sword King's seal. This thing was too powerful. Once used, nothing would be left. Therefore, Qing Mu and Ma didn't collect the sword seals on the ground. Instead, they left them for Lei Xingfeng. Unfortunately, Lei Xingfeng didn't find a thunder-type sword seal. Most of them were fire-type, metal-type, earth-type. There were very few wood-type and dark-type sword seals. Other than that, he also found a damaged ice-type sword seal. He planned to give it to Gao Yi. As for Lei Xingfeng's own Lei Yin and sword seal, he knew that it was different from other cultivators. After a few special refinements, it seemed to have walked on a different path. It was more vicious than other seals. It absorbed materials even more crazily. He didn't know what his Lei Yin and sword seal would become, but he vaguely knew that his Lei Yin and sword seal seemed to be more powerful. Due to some special reason, he wasn't willing to release Lei Yin and sword seal, especially the true body related to Lei Yin. That thing didn't seem like a human anymore. It was more like a thunderstar beast. This made him feel very uncomfortable. This was also the reason why he worked so hard to learn seals. If he could use seals, he would try his best not to use Lei Yin's sword seal and true body. However, Lei Xingfeng would try to use Lei Yin to absorb any thunder-type material he found. If Lei Yin couldn't absorb it, he would use the sword seal to absorb it. Generally speaking, as long as it was a new thunder-type material, Lei Yin and sword seal would absorb and decompose it. Especially now that he had obtained a complete skeleton of the thunderous star beast, he believed that the lightning seal would definitely be able to absorb it. He could foresee that once the thunderous star beast skeleton was absorbed by the lightning seal, he might advance to the level of a beginner Dao Lord. This feeling was so strong that if he wasn't in the ruins, he wouldn't be able to resist the urge to test it out. After digging through the pile of bones, Lei Xingfeng was like a hard-working bee, searching for useful things bit by bit. Dima and Qing Mu were also looking through. It was obvious that their minds weren't here. The level of the things here was too low for them, and most of them were useless. The two of them tacitly didn't rush Lei Xingfeng. From time to time, they would throw the things they found to him. The two of them had the same thought, which was to win over Lei Xingfeng. This kind of talent was very useful. Even if his combat strength was weak, his knowledge and understanding of restrictions was too shocking. Lei Xingfeng was happily collecting everything. He wanted everything. The people in the secret sect were in urgent need of all kinds of resources. Besides himself, he also had a bunch of relatives and brothers who needed these things. After cleaning up everything, Lei Xingfeng finally stopped. He knew that he couldn't search too carefully. There must be more things that he lost. However, he was too embarrassed to continue. It was a sin to keep two super experts waiting. After cleaning up, Lei Xingfeng continued to search with Dima and Qing Mu. Dima and Qing Mu were obviously a little impatient. So far, they hadn't found anything they needed. The two of them were getting impatient. In fact, the two of them also understood that this kind of place really depended on luck. If they were lucky, they might find something they needed. If they were unlucky, they probably wouldn't find anything. After opening the door to a passage, Lei Xingfeng suddenly found that the passage was blocked, and the blocked thing was a large number of broken pieces of humanoid puppets. They were densely packed behind the door. Dima pushed out his palm. With a boom, the debris blocking the passage was blasted away. Qing Mu rushed in first, and Lei Xingfeng stayed behind. The ground was full of broken pieces of humanoid puppets. Lei Xingfeng also saw a few broken energy crystals, but he didn't pick them up. These small things were no longer attractive to him. As they walked up the passage, the three of them saw that there were still broken pieces of humanoid puppets on the ground. Along with the broken pieces, there were scattered bones. Those were the bones of dead cultivators. They didn't know what had happened, but this place was very chaotic. Dima guessed, maybe it's an internal strife. Qing Mu said, it does seem like an internal strife. Maybe it's an internal strife between two or more factions. It doesn't seem like a fight between outsiders. Lei Xingfeng said, it doesn't matter if it's an internal strife or an external strife. As long as they don't have time to clean up, it's worth it. Chapter 693. Dima smiled and said, that's true. Unfortunately, the best things are usually kept in the hands of the higher-ups and not stored in the warehouse. So this time, it's still a matter of luck. As long as there's a material that can be used, all the hard work will be worth it. Qing Mu sighed and said, it's the second floor. My confidence is starting to waver. Dima said helplessly, it's always like this. When you try your best to find it, you won't find it. When you give up, you'll find it. I've been here a few times, and it's always been the same. Just wait and see. Maybe you'll have everything in the next moment. Lei Xingfeng felt helpless about this kind of attitude. This place was a hope. Of course, it was normal for hope to be destroyed. Instead, it was good luck that they succeeded. The rooms and passageways they searched were only a small part of the palace. This palace was very big. It had hollowed out the entire mountain and extended to other mountains. However, the three of them didn't have a topographic map. They could only run around randomly. Moreover, it wasn't safe here. When they opened a door, a few puppets would jump out. Encounters were common. It was a good thing that Dima and Qing Mu's strength was too great. These puppets didn't pose any threat to Xian Feng. Anyways, Xian Feng was following behind, and any danger would be blocked by the two experts. He only had to focus on finding the treasure. The three of them didn't enter the third floor. They were lost in the dense, underground passageways. If they didn't want to go back, they would have to wander around randomly. They had already left the mountain where the palace was and entered the back of the mountain. They were still in the middle of the mountain, but this mountain was no longer the same one. Lei Xingfeng was getting more and more confused. Finally, he said, Master Dima, Master Qing Mu, we're probably lost. Dima calculated and said, the position is wrong. No wonder there was a section of the way down. Should we turn back? It doesn't seem worth it. Qing Mu said, I think we should continue. Since we're already here, let's search first. Lei Xingfeng said, that's good. I think we should search too. The first palace area, I feel like it's otherworldly. It shouldn't be a place for valuables. Instead, it might be here. Dima didn't understand why. Lei Xingfeng said, I don't know. Anyway, this place doesn't seem like a place for valuables. Dima said in disappointment, intuition. It's not accurate. Forget it. Since we're here, let's search. He didn't want to go back. The huge buildings built in the belly of the mountain were like a maze. Probably because the cultivators had amazing abilities, it was very easy to carve out the rocks in the belly of the mountain to form living quarters. The entire belly of the mountain and the adjacent mountains had been hollowed out. There were countless rooms and countless passageways. If one didn't have a detailed topographic map, it would be very difficult to find the right way. It was very normal to get lost here. The three of them, now that they were far away from the palace, they didn't want to go back. They could only walk and try their luck. There were fewer restrictions here. Even if there were, they were the simplest restrictions. They didn't affect the three of them. Very quickly, the three of them walked out of the mountain. This was a large ice canyon, and Xian Feng could see that a large part of the mountain had collapsed. Almost half of the mountain had collapsed, and there was even a large palm print on the rock. Looking at it, he couldn't help but click his tongue. Good fellow, a single slap and half of the mountain collapsed. Who did this? Dima and Ching Mu's face turned serious. Ching Mu smiled bitterly. I can't do it. Dima said, this should be an attack from the real body. It's terrifying. I can't do it either. The two of them said they couldn't do it. Lei Xingfeng was shocked. These two were Emperor stage experts. How could they not do it? What kind of expert could do it? Dima said, let's go and take a look. Lei Xingfeng said, don't rush. I see restrictions. What kind of restriction is this? He could see the restriction nodes, but he realized that the restrictions in this canyon were strange. He couldn't understand it. It was too complicated. Many of the restriction nodes moved. It was completely out of his expectations. Dima said, is this restriction very powerful? Lei Xingfeng said, it's not about whether it's powerful or not. I can't understand it. Ching Mu said, how big is this restriction? Lei Xingfeng said, it's on the other side of the canyon. There isn't any here. However, if you look closely, it's still very big. Dima said, then let's go and take a look. We should be able to see it more clearly from the edge of the restriction. Lei Xingfeng said, yes, let's go together. This path was more tragic. There were countless human bones scattered on the ground. There were also many broken pieces of puppets. The ice on the ground had many bones embedded in it. It was unknown how many there were. Ching Mu said, at least tens of thousands of people died here. There are also countless puppets. This shouldn't be an internal conflict, right? Dima said, I don't know. It's really messy here. The three of them chatted as they walked. Soon, they arrived at the edge of the restriction. Lei Xingfeng carefully examined the restriction. After a while, he said, this is an internal restriction. We can go in, but it's difficult to get out. There's a very terrifying illusion restriction here. I don't know much about it. It's strange that it's only internal and not external. In other words, the entire restriction was to prevent people from entering. This restriction was so strange that Lei Xingfeng felt very strange when he just understood a little bit. The worst thing was that he couldn't understand some of the restrictions, so he didn't dare to go in directly. Dima didn't care too much. He said, let's go in. We should be able to go in, right? Lei Xingfeng said, it's easy to go in, but it'll be troublesome to get out. Ching Mu said, why? Lei Xingfeng said, although I don't completely understand this restriction, I know that it's a super strong restriction. I don't have the confidence to go in and get out. Dima said, don't worry. Even if we're trapped inside, it's not a big deal. More people will come soon. At that time, there will be more people and more restriction masters. A phone can't break the restriction here, but it doesn't mean that the restriction hall of the Ming-Zhe Alliance can't break it. Lei Xingfeng nodded and admitted, that's true. Okay, let's go in. The three of them rushed into the restriction just like that. The entry went very smoothly. Moreover, this restriction was very strange. It was not very thick, about 100 meters or so. The three of them walked in. After entering the restriction, the surrounding environment suddenly changed. There was no more snow, no more ice, and the surroundings were warm. The ground was covered with green plants and many trees. There were many buildings around, but they had all collapsed, forming a large area of dilapidated fences and walls. Countless bones could still be seen on the ground. Lei Xingfeng looked back and was shocked. Hey, what a terrifying restriction. Dima said, what's wrong? Lei Xingfeng said in shock, the restriction has completely changed. Dima said, what? Lei Xingfeng carefully observed for a moment and smiled bitterly. This is big trouble. What kind of restriction is this? It can actually hide the restriction nodes. His biggest reliance had suddenly disappeared. He couldn't see the restriction nodes, which meant that he couldn't recognize the entire restriction array. This was completely different from the restriction array he knew. Dima said, no, the area here isn't right. Lei Xingfeng said, I know this. After this place was shrouded by the restriction, the entire area expanded by more than 10 times. As for why it was like this, he didn't know either. He only knew that this was an extremely high-level restriction method. He probably hadn't grasped this restriction method yet. This place was also full of bones. It was unknown how many people had died here. Although the ground was full of plants, The ground was uneven. It could be imagined that the traces of battle left behind on the ground had not completely disappeared until now. Here, every step they took would hear a cracking sound. The bones were already brittle. When they stepped on them, they would shatter into powder. The three of them walked slowly and observed their surroundings. The lush plants blocked their vision, so Lei Xingfeng couldn't see the scenery in the distance. Of course, he couldn't fly up to see. He was sure that if he did, he would be like a target and would definitely be shot down by the restriction here. The three of them launched attacks from time to time to open up a path. The plants here were so dense that there was no path. Cutting through the thistles and thorns, the three of them casually opened up path. Dima was in the front, Lei Xingfeng was in the middle, and Qingmu was at the back. The three of them walked along the path that was opened up. Suddenly, Dima stopped and said, "There's a path." Lei Xingfeng didn't understand and said, "What?" Qingmu took a few steps forward and walked to Dima's side. He just glanced and said, "There's a path." Lei Xingfeng took a few steps forward and was suddenly shocked because a winding path appeared in the dense forest. It was so conspicuous. He said, "There's someone. This path must have been trampled by someone. It definitely wasn't formed naturally. If there was a path, there must be someone. This path was obviously very new." The three of them looked at each other. This was too strange. From the moment they entered this ruin, they thought that there was no one here. However, this path broke their previous view. There was someone here. Once they judged that there was someone here, the three of them became extremely vigilant. The three of them followed the path and walked down. Soon, they saw a farmland with some food plants. Lei Xingfeng recognized that this was a kind of plant similar to a kudzu vine. Its roots were edible, but the starchy food formed by this kind of roots was relatively unpalatable. Chapter 694. Lei Xingfeng estimated that there were about 3 acres of vines crawling all over the ground. Some of them had already been dug up. He said, "This is man-made. Well, there can't be more than 3 people here. This food is only enough for 2 or 3 people." Demas said, "That means there is at least 1 living person here." He sounded a little excited. Then Qingmu and Lei Xingfeng also became excited. This was a living evidence. If it was a person or a descendant of the relic, he might know the topography of the entire relic and where the things were stored. Qingmu said, "No matter what, we have to find him." Dima's eyes suddenly lit up. He said, "Yes, we have to catch this person." Lei Xingfeng's heart slightly moved, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he followed the 2 masters inside. He thought that if the person here was a descendant of the relic's owner, or someone who was trapped here, and since the relic was so old, this person could still be alive. His strength was a little scary. Although age didn't completely represent one's strength, the longer one lived, the higher one's achievements would be. The practitioners here had a special characteristic. As long as they could advance, they could live for a long time. That kind of feeling was like a snake shedding its skin. Shedding a layer of skin would make one grow bigger and stronger. After checking for a while, the 3 of them walked along the path inside. After walking for about a quarter of an hour, the 3 of them saw a flat ground and a lonely wooden shed. In other words, this was a building with only a roof and no walls. It could only block the rain but not the wind. A person was sitting in the middle of the wooden shed. The person gave Lei Xingfeng the feeling that he was a statue. The 3 of them stood outside the wooden shed, quietly looking at the person. The person didn't move, as if he had been dead for a long time. However, the 3 of them intuitively told themselves that this person was still alive. Lei Xingfeng carefully sized up this monster-like person. The skin on this person's face was like an air-dried orange peel. His skin was completely flabby, so there were countless wrinkles on his face. Moreover, this person's eyes were closed. His hair was completely white, reaching the ground. His eyebrows were extremely long, at least half a foot long, but he didn't have any beard. His upper body was naked, and the skin on his upper body was similar to his face. It was also full of wrinkles, and there were also large patches of age spots. A vine was tied to his waist, and a very small piece of animal skin was tied to the vine, covering his crotch. He just sat there, giving Exine Phone a strange feeling. It didn't feel like a person sitting there, but more like a mountain standing on the ground. Although there wasn't any aura coming from him, but that formless aura was strangely seeping out. At first, Dima and Aoki looked down on him. However, after standing there for a while, their expressions became more and more serious. Their originally straight waists were actually slightly bent. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but take a step back. He instinctively felt danger. However, with Dima and Aoki here, he was able to resist the urge to turn around and run. The three of them stood there for a full 15 minutes. Suddenly, the old man opened his eyes. At that moment, the three of them felt the old man's sharp gaze. Lei Xingfeng felt like he was in a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. This person was emitting a huge, bloody aura. Dima and Aoki's expressions changed greatly. The two of them quickly took a few steps back. Lei Xingfeng could clearly see that they were on full alert. His heart suddenly jumped. The old man said something. His voice was a bit hoarse, but the three of them could hear it clearly. However, none of them understood what he was saying. Dima braced himself and said, "Senior, we don't understand what you're saying." The old man's face showed a trace of surprise. He said, "How did you guys come in?" He spoke very awkwardly, but the three of them understood. Dima said, "This is a ruin. We found it, so we came in to take a look. Senior, have you been here all this time?" Lei Xingfeng also asked curiously, "Senior, is this your sect?" The old man's face showed a trace of mockery. He said, "I'm the same as you guys. We're all outsiders. First come, first served. Well, you guys should be like me in the future. You won't be able to get out anymore. I didn't expect that someone would come to accompany me when I'm about to die." Interesting. Dima and the other two smiled bitterly. Lei Xingfeng asked, "Senior, when you came in, was there anyone here?" The old man said lightly, "Of course, there were many people." "Ha, many people." His laughter was filled with indifference and cold, killing intent. Dima didn't understand. He said, "Then when did you see them? Were they?" Two words came out of the old man's mouth. "Kill." The three of them were shocked. Lei Xingfeng said, the people of the original sect here were killed by Senior?" He found it hard to believe. He thought that this sect had been abandoned for a long time. How could this person still be alive? Moreover, how could someone who could destroy a large sect be trapped in such a restriction? Dima suddenly said, "You're injured?" The old man said indifferently, "What a smart kid. Hee." His laughter was filled with an indescribable feeling. Dima's face changed. He said, "Senior, you want to kill us?" Qing Mu and Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but take a step back. They couldn't see through this person's strength at all, but the threat was very strong. The three of them were alarmed. They were all on guard. The old man said indifferently, "Even if I don't kill you now, do you think you can get out of here?" Dima said, "What do you mean?" The old man said, "What do I mean?" "Haha, don't you understand what I said? You can't get out. You'll either be trapped here or killed by me. In short, it'll be hard for you to get out alive. Doesn't that sound good?" His words were getting more and more fluent. Dima was a monarch-level expert. Almost no one dared to speak to him like that. He said, "You want to kill me?" The old man looked at him. His eyes were piercing. He said indifferently, "You're quite strong. But against me, there's no other outcome. It'll be a fight to the death. Yes, it's useless even with you." He turned to Qing Mu and said, as for Lei Xingfeng, he ignored him. With Lei Xingfeng's strength, he didn't even need to check. Based on his intuition, he knew that he was the weakest. His attention was focused on Dima and Qing Mu. These two were quite strong, but he was more confident in his own strength. Dima and Qing Mu were furious, but both of them were wary of each other's strong aura. They instinctively felt that if they fought, they might lose. This feeling made them feel very uncomfortable. Lei Xingfeng didn't want them to fight. He said, "Senior, I have a way to get out." The old man was surprised. He stared at Lei Xingfeng and said, "You know about seals?" Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "That's right. I'm a seal master." This sentence made the old man smile. He said, no wonder. You're so weak, but you can come in with two experts." With these words, Xian Feng's face turned red. This was looking down on him too much. However, he wasn't stupid. He wouldn't argue with the old man over this. Truthfully speaking, his strength was indeed the weakest of them all. Dima and Qing Mu didn't say anything. They protected Lei Xingfeng behind them. They were on guard. They knew that Lei Xingfeng was indispensable if they wanted to get out. The old man said indifferently, "I was going to kill the three of you. Well, since there's a seal master, I'll spare your lives. Leave the little guy here. You two can go." Dima and Qing Mu's expressions suddenly changed. Dima said, "He can't stay." The old man spoke indifferently. "All right, since the two of you are tired of living, I'll send you on your way." As he spoke, he slowly stood up and a suffocating aura spread out. In an instant, Xian Feng felt as if he was about to stop breathing. This man was too strong. Dima and Qing Mu grabbed Lei Xingfeng and retreated quickly. Although the old man stood up, he didn't do anything. He just looked at the three of them indifferently. His eyes were full of contempt. "I haven't killed anyone for a long time. It's so boring," the old man said with emotion. This sentence made Lei Xingfeng and the others' hair stand up. They weren't ordinary people. They had experienced countless battles and killings. However, the old man's killing intent made them feel terrified. Even Dima was no exception. Qing Mu threw Lei Xingfeng back. Dima and Qing Mu looked at each other. Although they were a little scared, they knew that they couldn't run. Once they started running, they would lose their advantage. Dima said, "Go." In an instant, Dima and Qing Mu released their real bodies. For monarch-level experts, once they released their real bodies, it would be a fight to the death. For experts like them, their real bodies were all their strength, all their foundation, all their attacking power. Other methods were useless against their real bodies. Lei Xingfeng retreated quickly. He wasn't stupid. With Dima and Qing Mu's strength, even if he didn't do anything, he would be courting death. Hence, it was better for him to stay as far away from the three of them as possible. Dima's real body was revealed. It was a shadow that was 10 meters tall, but it quickly solidified. His real body also shrank a little. This was because he still had some power left. Qing Mu's real body was also revealed. It was also 10 meters tall, and it solidified in a few breaths. However, compared to Dima's real body, his real body was a little bit weaker. It couldn't be helped. His real body was weaker than Dima's real body. Once the two of them solidified their real bodies, they didn't hesitate at all. They immediately slapped down. The real body was a strange phenomenon. It was like a combination of light and shadow. At first, it was a shadow, a gray shadow. As one's cultivation deepened, the shadow would gradually solidify. At Dima's level, other than the fact that the real body could emit light, it wasn't much different from a real body. With such a real body, once in battle, it could explode with terrifying fighting power. For example, it could easily smash a 10-meter-tall rock with one punch. Chapter 695. Of course, the real body could also be combined with the sword seal. Once combined with the sword seal, it would be able to attack from a distance. The attack range of 1,000 meters would also be terrifying to the extreme. Lei Xingfeng also had a real body, and he even had a mutated one. However, after seeing Dima and Qing Mu's real bodies, he was quite shocked and felt a bit inferior. One had to know that Dima and Qing Mu were both in their human form, while he was in his Thunderstar Beast form. Although he was powerful, he didn't look like a human. Ever since he had this real body, he had never let it out to fight. Boom! Lei Xingfeng looked back, and an unparalleled power spread out, instantly knocking him to the ground. There was no way for him to resist at all. Lying on the ground, Lei Xingfeng even thought of retreating into the mirror world. However, he had come this far with great difficulty, and he didn't want to give up. He could only grit his teeth and endure. With his whole body on the ground, Lei Xingfeng forced himself to look up. This scene would be etched in his memory for the rest of his life. The elder's real body also appeared. It was a very special real body. What confused Lei Xingfeng was that the elder's real body wasn't in human form. Instead, it was a black smoke that rose up and quickly formed a strange devil-like shape. The so-called devil-like shape was a black smoke-like thing that quickly condensed together. Two red, lantern-like lights flickered in and out of the black smoke, as if they had seen a ghost. Lei Xingfeng only took a glance and was shocked. What was this thing? Immediately, Lei Xingfeng thought of an extremely rare attribute. Could it be the dark attribute? It was Lei Xingfeng's first time seeing a cultivator with this attribute. Dima and Qing Mu roared continuously. That sound shook the earth. One had to know that this was the roar of the real body, and it was much louder than the original. It shook Lei Xingfeng's head until it hurt. Boom! Dima kept retreating. He was shocked to find that even if he released his real body, it would still be very difficult to defeat the enemy. The only thing that made him feel slightly relieved was that although the enemy was extremely powerful, they didn't seem to be using their full strength. He was able to block every attack. Of course, it was very strenuous. Luckily, Qing Mu was holding him back, so he wouldn't be defeated immediately. This kind of battle was the most dangerous. At their level, releasing their real bodies was almost a life and death battle. Neither side could stop. Lei Xingfeng didn't dare to stay in the same place. He kept moving backwards, or more accurately, he was drifting backwards. Waves of suffocating airflow kept exploding. Lei Xingfeng was having a hard time moving. Occasionally, he would be hit by the airflow and smashed to the ground. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but smile bitterly. It was difficult for him to even watch from the side, let alone participate in this kind of battle. Suddenly, the old man roared and his true body spread out, instantly wrapping around Dima's true body. At this moment, Dima's true body seemed to have fallen into a lake of black smoke. It was a very strange sight. Lei Xingfeng's heart chilled. He heard Dima's painful roar. The real body that was originally condensed started to melt bit by bit. Qing Mu grabbed at the old man's core, which was where the seal was. Suddenly, a jet-black palm went up to meet it. There was a thunderous sound, and the entire ground shook. Lei Xingfeng was immediately shaken to the ground. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. This was too much. With Qing Mu's help, Dima was finally able to escape. His heart was filled with despair. His opponent's previous attack was something he couldn't block at all. If it weren't for Qing Mu, he knew that he would be in big trouble. He immediately broke free and threw a punch. Qing Mu's attack just now forced him to retreat. He was weaker than Dima and even weaker than the old man. This attack had already injured him. Dima roared, "Let's go together." The two of them attacked together like crazy. For a moment, the old man was forced into a fluster. In fact, with the old man's strength, defeating the two of them, or even killing them, would not be very difficult. Unfortunately, he was injured, so it was much more difficult for him to kill the two of them. The continuous attacks forced the old man to retreat. For a moment, the old man couldn't do anything. He was quite passive. Lei Xingfeng finally stood up and ran away crazily. He didn't even dare to look. When Lei Xingfeng finally stood up and ran, the noise behind him was even more earth-shattering. As he ran, Lei Xingfeng cursed. He didn't expect the old man to be so unreasonable. He tried his best to suppress the thought of going back through the mirror realm. He ran forward crazily. Even if he was given the courage, he wouldn't dare to fly. Suddenly, the sound of ghosts crying and wolves howling came from behind. That sound went straight to the heart. Lei Xingfeng ran with his head in his hands, but he still couldn't get rid of this strange sound. After a few breaths, Lei Xingfeng felt his body go soft. He was shocked. He immediately covered his body with thunder and lightning. In an instant, his whole body was shining with electric light. When the thunder and lightning covered his body, Lei Xingfeng was surprised to find that the thunder and lightning could effectively protect him. In fact, he didn't expect that thunder and lightning were the best weapon to suppress the dark element. He was already frightened by the old man's strength. With the old man's strength, he didn't doubt that he could probably kill him with just one finger. Suddenly, a pressure came from behind. Lei Xingfeng instinctively raised his hand to release thunder and lightning. He heard Dima say, "It's me." Then, Lei Xingfeng's arm was grabbed. His body rushed forward quickly. He turned his head and saw Dima holding him and running. He couldn't catch up with Dima's speed. With Dima's help, Lei Xingfeng finally calmed down a little. He tried to look around and shouted, "Run to the left." Lei Xingfeng saw a few restriction nodes and knew that this was the location of the restriction. He had always been very good at using restrictions to block enemies. Hearing this, Dima turned without hesitation. Qingmu followed behind him. The three of them ran in a very sorry state. Under Lei Xingfeng's guidance, the three of them turned left and right in the open space. The old man kept chasing after them. It was obvious that the old man was blind to restrictions. When Lei Xingfeng and the other two entered the restriction, he bumped into the restriction. Although the restriction here couldn't stop his attack, the three of them were getting further and further away. The old man was infuriated as he roared. However, the seals here were too terrifying. Even a great expert like him couldn't break through them. He could only watch as the three of them disappeared. He knew that they had arrived at another area with seals. With their strength, they could run for several days and nights without any problems. But this time, it was completely different. This kind of mental pressure made them feel exhausted. The three of them were lying on the ground and gasping for breath. Dima suddenly laughed and said, "How long has it been since I felt this nervous? Haha, this is nonsense. I didn't expect to meet such an old freak." Dima said, "Haha, I didn't think that I would meet such an old freak." Dima smiled and said, "How long has it been since I felt this nervous?" Qingmu said, "This guy is too strong. I can't even do anything. This guy, we don't even know his name." Lei Xingfeng said, "It's scary. I think he has an old injury." Dima said, "Yes, I think so too. If this guy wasn't injured, we probably wouldn't have been able to escape." Qingmu said, Yes, this guy is too strong." The three of them sighed for a moment. Dima said, "The most important thing." He said, "A phone, how do we get out?" Qingmu's expression also became serious. He said, "A phone? Is this a dangerous place? I saw that guy. He's so strong, but he's still trapped here. Can we get out?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Honestly, I don't know. Before I check, I don't know if we can get out." Dima and Qingmu's face became gloomy. If it wasn't for that old pervert, they might still have a chance to get out. However, with that old guy here, it would be difficult for them to check. Once they met, it would be another battle. Regardless of whether they won or lost, it would be impossible to check the restriction calmly. Qingmu said, "What should we do?" Dima said, "Let's try to check the restriction first. If it doesn't work, we'll wait. I believe that the Ming-Zhe Alliance will send experts here. By then, they should be able to break this restriction." Qingmu thought that this was the only way. He said, "Well, this is the place that the headquarters will focus on. I believe that a lot of people will come here for benefits." Xi and Feng thought for a while and said, Waiting is also a way, but the moment the people from the headquarters enter, they will be attacked by that old fellow, unless a super expert enters. Otherwise, the people from the headquarters will be massacred." Dima said, "That's not something we can control. When the time comes, if we can hold him back, we'll hold him back. If not, we'll leave." Lei Xingfeng felt a chill in his heart. However, he didn't say anything this time. He didn't have any sense of belonging to the Ming-Zhe Alliance. As a mole, as long as he didn't hurt himself, he would leave without any psychological burden. He said, "Well, that's the only way." Dima said, "It's not safe here. Let's find a more secluded place." Qingmu said, "Let a phone lead the way. It seems that there are restrictions everywhere." Lei Xingfeng said, "That's right. The restrictions here are projected. It's hard to break them, but it's not a big problem to avoid or break them temporarily." With two experts by his side and his own control of restrictions, he was confident that he could deal with them here. Dima stood up and said, "Let's go. We can't stay here any longer." The three of them stood up and were about to leave when they heard a loud shout from not far away. "Open!" Boom! This was the sound of an explosion when the restriction was broken. Lei Xingfeng's expression changed, and he said, "Follow me." As soon as he heard that, he knew that all the restrictions in the vicinity were gone. This guy actually swept through all the restrictions in this area. Of course, He also knew that the restrictions would recover in a few minutes. This kind of forceful sweeping could not really break the restrictions. However, if the restrictions were swept away, the three of them would be exposed. Chapter 696. Under Lei Xingfeng's lead, the three of them ran away in panic. They gradually left the old man, and the roaring sound from afar gradually disappeared. At this moment, Lei Xingfeng began to carefully observe the surroundings and the restriction nodes. The restriction nodes here were all projected here, and he understood this very well. Dama said, "How about here?" Lei Xingfeng said, "The restriction is very complicated. This is the first time I have seen this kind of restriction. I need some time to understand it." Dama secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, he was not afraid of trouble and brought Lei Xingfeng. Otherwise, it would be difficult. With his understanding of restrictions, it would be difficult for him to move even an inch. As they went deeper, Lei Xingfeng found countless restriction nodes. However, the restriction nodes here were different from the ones he had seen before. The restriction nodes here were illusory, unlike the ones he had seen before. They were real and could be used to deduce the location of the restriction nodes. Therefore, to figure out where the restriction nodes were, he would need a long time to deduce. The trees here were lush. Different from the outside, the climate here was very mild, which was very suitable for the growth of plants. Thick trees could be seen everywhere. Walking here, it was even easier to trigger the restriction that was projected here. Lei Xingfeng carefully led the way in front, while Dama and Qing Mu followed closely behind. Lei Xingfeng did not know how big this place was. After walking for half a day, he still could not see the edge of the restriction, which made him very confused. Stopping by a very small pond, Lei Xingfeng said in a low voice, "This area should be covered by a large-scale restriction. If we continue to walk like this, we will not be able to get out. We can't even find the edge of the restriction. This restriction is too powerful. I cannot solve it for now. Let's take a rest first." This was a small pond with clear water. It was surrounded by very tall trees, which covered the pond. It was very cool, and there was a breeze blowing through the trees. The three of them felt very comfortable. Lei Xingfeng came to the side of the pond, grabbed some water, and washed his face. The cold water cleared his mind. There were very few restriction nodes around the pond. As long as one didn't touch them, the restriction wouldn't be triggered. Therefore, this place was relatively safe. The three of them sat down and took out their rations. It had been such a long time, and the three of them had barely eaten anything. Even at their level of cultivation, food and water were still essential. Lei Xingfeng gobbled down the braised meat. His hidden space might not have much, but had plenty of food and water. After going through the heavenly moat, he had a deep understanding of this. Even if you were a practitioner and could eat very little food and water for a few months, it didn't mean you could eat nothing. That would really starve you to death. The three of them ate quickly, filling their stomachs carelessly. Demas said, "Afeng, we can't stay here. We have to find a way out." Lei Xingfeng nodded. "Yeah, it's too dangerous here. All right, let's move on." Qing Mu said, "As long as we find the edge of the restriction, you'll have a way out?" Lei Xingfeng shook his head. "No, as long as we find the edge of the restriction, I can, well, not break it, but see if I can break it. Of course, if I can't see the edge of the restriction, I can't touch it. There's no way to break it." Demas said, "All right, no matter if we can break it or not, let's find it first. Right now, everything is just empty talk." The three of them continued forward. Lei Xingfeng was still leading the way. Only he could see the restriction nodes and avoid the damage. After a while, the three of them saw a very small residential area. However, almost all the buildings were destroyed. Large amounts of plants grew there. Lei Xingfeng walked in. This was the only place without any restriction. Once again, they saw large amounts of white bones on the ground. There were also many puppet parts. A few skulls were even embedded in the tree trunks. It looked abnormally terrifying. With a cracking sound, Dima looked at the broken bones under his feet and said, "Many people died here too." Lei Xingfeng said, "I wonder if it was that old guy who killed them." At this point, the three of them didn't have any intention to search for the relic. They were about to die. What else would they want? There was a half-collapsed tower here. Lei Xingfeng came to the bottom of the tower and climbed up along the outside wall. In a few breaths, he climbed up the tower dozens of meters high. Dima and Qing Mu also climbed up. The location of the broken tower was similar to the surrounding trees. It was about 2 meters higher than the trees. The view was very broad. The three of them climbed up and looked outside. They couldn't help but be stunned. Looking around, there was an endless forest. The treetops rose and fell endlessly. There was no mountain range at all. Lei Xingfeng's face suddenly turned bitter. He said, "Either it's because of the restriction, or this is not the place we came from. What the hell is this?" Dima and Qing Mu were knowledgeable people, but this was the first time they saw such a thing. Dima said, "Maybe this isn't a relic? That's impossible." Qing Mu said, "I think it's because of the restriction. It shouldn't be something that can be seen normally." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "I think so too. But this restriction is too advanced. I can't tell." Dima said, "What a pity." He regretted it. If he had known that the restriction of the relic was so powerful, he would have found a restriction grandmaster no matter what. Even if there wasn't a restriction grandmaster, it would be good to find a restriction grandmaster. Lei Xingfeng was still a bit lacking. In fact, he didn't know that even if he found a restriction grandmaster or a restriction grandmaster, they might not be able to understand this strange restriction. Lei Xingfeng observed carefully. He could still see many restriction nodes. On the ground, the field of vision was small and the observation position was not good. The restriction nodes he could see were scattered. But on this broken tower, he could see many restriction nodes. This was beneficial for his analysis. Dima saw that Lei Xingfeng's eyes were constantly emitting silver light. He asked curiously, "What's wrong with your eyes?" Lei Xingfeng said, "It's one of my skills." He didn't continue to explain. Dima knew that many cultivators had their own skills. This was something that couldn't be envied, so he didn't continue to ask. Lei Xingfeng observed in a circle. Soon, he drew a diagram of the restriction nodes in his mind. Of course, this diagram was incomplete. It was missing a part of the forest. But this gave him an impression, so he could begin to speculate. It had to be said that Lei Xingfeng was very talented in restriction, especially in terms of calculation and speculations. They were even more amazing. This was shown when he started to come into contact with restrictions. Coupled with his unique eyes, his understanding of restrictions advanced by leaps and bounds. Ordinary cultivators really couldn't compare with him. Until now, Lei Xingfeng had only found a little pattern of this restriction, but it was almost impossible to completely understand it. At this point, Lei Xingfeng could only find some weak points of the restriction. Gradually, he speculated 1 or 2 weak points. But these weak points needed to be investigated on the spot. Right now, he was just speculating. He couldn't go to one of the weak points. That direction was where the old man was. There was another weak point, which was not far from here. Lei Xingfeng said, "Okay, we can go. This is not a place to stay for long." They all knew that the old man was tracking them, so they couldn't stay in any place for too long. Whether it was Dima, Qing Mu, or Lei Xingfeng, they all had a clear understanding. The three jumped down from half of the tower. They didn't have time to search the ruins and just ran toward a place not far away. Lei Xingfeng ran at the front and soon went deep into the forest. Although the forest blocked their vision and they couldn't see the restriction nodes, it also blocked the old man's tracking. Soon, Lei Xingfeng came to a bush. There were very few trees here. The bushes were half the height of a person. They were densely packed with restriction nodes. Lei Xingfeng stopped at the edge of the bushes and said, "Wait a minute. There are dense restrictions here." After looking carefully for a moment, Lei Xingfeng was completely defeated. The complexity of this restriction was simply appalling. He didn't even know how it was designed. The restrictions he had encountered before were simply too weak compared to this restriction. Dima and Qing Mu were paying attention to Lei Xingfeng's face. Seeing this guy's face turn green and then white, their hearts skipped a beat. After a while, seeing that Lei Xingfeng was still in a daze, Dima couldn't help but ask, "How is it?" Lei Xingfeng sighed and said, "Alas, this restriction. I have never encountered it before. It's too difficult." Actually, if it was another restriction master, it wouldn't be difficult because they couldn't see through it. However, Lei Xingfeng was completely different. The key was that he could see the restriction nodes. This way, he could make a basic deduction. It was because of this reason that he felt it was very difficult. Lei Xingfeng thought for a moment, and still felt that he didn't know where to start. He said, "Forget it. Let's leave here." Demas said, "You can't open the restriction?" Lei Xingfeng nodded and said with a bitter smile, "It's not open. I don't understand it at all." Dima and Qing Mu's eyes showed a trace of disappointment. Dima said straightforwardly, "Okay, let's leave here." A gloomy voice sounded not far away. "You guys are running so fast. Run. In here, where can you run to?" The old man stood not far away and looked at the three with cold eyes. Dima and Qing Mu immediately stood in front of Lei Xingfeng. Dima said, "We have no grievances. Why are you chasing us?" The old man said indifferently, "You two are quite capable to be able to fight with me and escape. All right, since you don't want me to chase you, then I have a condition. As long as you agree, I will give up chasing you." Dima and Qing Mu's faces changed. They knew the so-called condition without needing it. However, they didn't want to give up Lei Xingfeng. In this place, if there was no restriction master, then they wouldn't be able to leave for the rest of their lives. Of course, they could still count on the people from the Mingzhe lead to come in. However, they didn't have much confidence in that kind of unreliable thing. Chapter 697. Dima braced himself and said, "We can talk about anything, but the three of us are one. A phone can't be handed over to you." Saying something like that was already his limit. The old man sneered, "I don't care if you two live or die, but if you want to die, I can help you." Dima took a step back. Lei Xingfeng heard Dima's words and understood that Dima and Qing Mu couldn't protect him. However, he wasn't worried. After all, he had the mirror realm to protect him. If worst came to worst, he could go back to the mirror realm and start all over again. It was just a pity that it wasn't easy to sneak into the Mingzhe alliance. Lei Xingfeng said, "Master Dima, Master Qing Mu, you two go first. I'll go with him." Dima and Qing Mu were surprised. Lei Xingfeng explained, "Before the seal is broken, I'm still safe. There's no need for us to be trapped here." The old man applauded, "Not bad, not bad. Little guy, not bad." He had seen too many people abandon their companions at a critical moment. These three people's actions were very surprising. He said, "For the sake of this little guy, you two can leave." Dima hesitated. He and Qing Mu looked at each other. Qing Mu shook his head slightly, indicating that they shouldn't continue arguing. As long as they were alive, there was hope to save Lei Xingfeng. The two slowly retreated. Dima said, "A phone, save your life." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "I will." Dima and Qing Mu turned around and ran away. Lei Xingfeng was speechless as he looked at the two guys who ran faster than rabbits. The old man laughed loudly. Lei Xingfeng rolled his eyes and said unhappily, "Is it that funny?" As long as this guy didn't attack immediately, he was confident that he could escape, so he wasn't afraid. The old man didn't think that Lei Xingfeng would dare to talk to him like this. He admired this little guy. In terms of strength, this little guy was completely useless. Even if Lei Xingfeng's lightning attribute was restrained, the old man wouldn't be worried at all. The difference in strength between them was too big to be worth his attention. "Okay, little guy, come with me." Lei Xingfeng followed him helplessly. They walked through the bushes and returned to the forest. "Where are you taking me?" The old man said lightly, "I'll take you to a place. When I need you, I'll tell you." Lei Xingfeng didn't say anything else. He followed the old man and kept walking in the forest. He didn't know much about other things, but he could see clearly the restriction nodes in the forest. After walking for a few kilometers, Lei Xingfeng found that there were more restriction nodes. The old man walked in a very rough way. He just walked in a straight line. Any restriction nodes that reacted were forcefully broken or scattered by him. The entire restriction couldn't react. This guy's strength really surprised Lei Xingfeng. He was too strong. After walking through a dense restriction node, The old man stopped and said, "Little guy, come here." Lei Xingfeng walked to the old man and said, "What's wrong?" The old man said, "You can't force your way in here. Do you have a way to get through?" Xian Feng observed carefully, and after a moment, he understood this restriction. It was a rather complicated conversion restriction. If one were to forcefully attack it, then the restriction would quickly change. In other words, if one were to destroy this restriction node, then one wouldn't be able to know what was behind the restriction, and the entire scenery would change, leading one down the wrong path. It seemed that the old man had tried many times, but was unable to truly enter this restriction. Even if the old man forced his way in, he wouldn't be able to reach the place he wanted to go. After seeing the restriction here, Lei Xingfeng completely understood. Lei Xingfeng said, "Yes, you can follow me." The old man was obviously relieved. He said, "As long as we get through here, I'll spare your life." Lei Xingfeng said, "Senior, do you mean it?" The old man said arrogantly, "I don't talk nonsense." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "If that's the case, then follow me." He walked forward slowly. It was very difficult to break this restriction, but he could easily do it without touching it or activating it. As someone who could see the restriction nodes, it was a very easy task to find a path that didn't touch the restriction nodes. The two of them walked in tandem. Lei Xingfeng walked very slowly and gave the old man pointers from time to prevent him from touching the restriction nodes and activating it. The old man walked all the way. Although there were many twists and turns, what surprised him was that the restriction didn't move at all. He couldn't help but be overjoyed. He had suffered too many losses because of this restriction. No matter what method he used, as long as he reached this place, the restriction would definitely activate. Although it couldn't hurt him, he couldn't pass through it. This made him extremely helpless. He didn't expect Lei Xingfeng to solve it so easily. Because of this, he began to pay more attention to Lei Xingfeng. After a while, the two of them entered a new world. This was a spacious flat ground. There were man-made bricks on the ground. Many of them were already broken, but there were no plants. Not far away, there was a huge teleportation gate. This was the first time Lei Xingfeng had seen this kind of teleportation gate. It was really huge, at least 100 meters high. Seeing this teleportation gate, the old man's face showed a trace of ecstasy. He muttered to himself, "Finally King found it. I didn't expect that I would still be alive to see this thing." Lei Xingfeng stood quietly. This teleportation gate gave him a great shock. Based on his understanding of secret gates, this kind of huge teleportation gate could definitely teleport him to an extremely far place. The old man ignored Lei Xingfeng and came to the teleportation gate. He reached out his hand to touch the gate and said, "It's intact. Ha! Ha ha ha! I can King finally go back." Lei Xingfeng looked back. He was confident that he could go back the way he came. His heart was slightly relieved. If he couldn't go back, it would be terrible. The old man said, "Little guy, come here." Lei Xingfeng walked in front of the old man and said, "Senior." The old man said, "Remove the restriction here." It was a very simple trigger restriction. Once it was triggered, it wouldn't attack the person who triggered it. Instead, it would directly destroy the teleportation gate. Even if the old man didn't understand restrictions, he could still see the danger. Knowing that there was a restriction, he didn't want to take any risks. Since there was a restriction master on the side, he wouldn't be stupid enough to break it himself. For Lei Xingfeng, breaking this restriction wasn't difficult at all. After a few minutes, the restriction was broken. He said, "It's done." The old man stepped forward and nodded with satisfaction. "Not bad. What kind of restriction is this?" Lei Xingfeng said, "It's a very ordinary trigger restriction. Once it's triggered, this teleportation gate will be destroyed." The old man's face changed. He cursed loudly, King be starred. "Aren't you trying to kill me? King be starred." He was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. Just now, he really wanted to break it by force. Fortunately, he had an idea and asked Lei Xingfeng to break it. If he broke it himself, this teleportation gate would be gone. Lei Xingfeng said, "Senior, Are you leaving? The old man sneered. I've stayed here long enough. Of course, I'm leaving. Lei Xingfeng said, well, since Senior wants to leave, Junior won't accompany you. The old man said lightly, if you don't accompany me, who will? Lei Xingfeng was stunned. He said, I'm weak. It's useless to follow Senior. If you bring me along, it'll be troublesome. The old man laughed. I only said, I'll spare your life. I didn't say I'll let you go. If you don't want to die, follow me. Lei Xingfeng blurted out, bastard. He immediately prepared to hide in the mirror world. He thought to himself, I'm not playing anymore. Suddenly, his body tightened. He couldn't even move, let alone return to the mirror world. Lei Xingfeng's heart tightened. He thought to himself, it's over. He couldn't help but regret being too impulsive. The old man suddenly appeared in front of him and said, who is it? Who's the bastard? He didn't understand this sentence. Bastard was the word Lei Xingfeng used to scold people in his previous life. In this life, the old man didn't understand, but he understood Lei Xingfeng's tone. He thought he was scolding someone. Lei Xingfeng said, he's not here. The old man was confused by Lei Xingfeng's sudden words. He said, who's not here? Xian Feng scolded, bastard. This scolding really made him feel good both physically and mentally. The old man was puzzled. Bastard isn't here? Lei Xingfeng nodded. Yes, he's not here. He couldn't help but feel cold. This sentence almost killed him. The old man still didn't understand, but he didn't want to be entangled. He said, stay here and don't move. Don't even think about escaping. With your strength, it'll be useless even if you run to the ends of the earth. As he spoke, he released the imprisonment and turned to the teleportation gate. Lei Xingfeng was extremely hesitant. Should he immediately return to the mirror world or continue to wait? The old man quickly inserted all kinds of energy crystals. Lei Xingfeng had never seen this kind of crystal before. It immediately attracted his attention. The size of this crystal was a bit scary. The crystals that Lei Xingfeng had obtained before, whether they were man-made or natural, were only the size of a palm. However, the crystal that the old man took out was no exaggeration to say that it was more than 1 foot long. It was almost the same as glass in his previous life. It was also transparent. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but ask, what kind of crystal energy is this? The old man said indifferently, synthesized and refined crystals. It's best used in secret doors. It's not suitable for cultivation. After using a total of 300 of these large crystals, the entire teleportation gate began to shine. Lei Xingfeng suddenly realized that this was the teleportation gate. He took a step back and was just about to enter the mirror world when the old man grabbed him and smiled. Little guy, come with me. Lei Xingfeng didn't have much resistance. With the mirror world, he was confident that he could escape. Even if he couldn't escape here, he could go to the other side of the teleportation gate. There was always a chance to leave. I'll go with you. Don't grab me. The old man sneered. I've always been very careful. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.